Hello and welcome to Lorehammer. It's another new year, new episode. I'm your host, Mark. Joining me, we got a couple different people. We got Jordan. Hey.
Hello.
I noticed you got a little Lorehammer merchandise on the back wall there, hung up now.
Excuse me. Yeah, I did. Because Canada Post is super gay. I ordered this like 6 weeks ago, and finally got here because they were striking or some crap.
They're doing the Lord's work up there. You know, they're so irreplaceable, like DoorDash delivery drivers. But
Yeah,
that's neither here nor there.
well, I
We also got Logan.
I ordered more things on this, but I only sent me one item, and that was the Lorehammer poster. So don't trigger me right now.
Yeah, we also got Logan on the show. Welcome.
Yeah, hey, thanks for bringing me up to the A or B team, whichever one this is. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, you made it all the way up to the A team with old Jordy, although Christian is not with us, which some people think is a benefit. We'll see.
That's funny. Yeah, but no, I'm excited to be here.
Cool. And our final co-host today is going to be Nemo. He was on our High Lords episode, and let's give him another go. Let's see what he has to say. Hey, welcome, Nemo.
You know, I wasn't sure if I was going to shit talk or be buddy with Christian, and I honestly haven't decided yet.
Yeah, you have to fully meet him before you can decide if you like him or not, you know. It's tilted to the not like, but then you might meet him and you might like him. Maybe.
I mean, maybe you love to hate him, or maybe you hate to love him. They're like opposite sides of the same coin, eh?
Exactly. Well, today's episode, we're talking Demon Incursions, Warp Rifts, and Demon Worlds. It's going to be a wild episode of warp talk and just getting lost in all the shenanigans. And, you know, maybe we'll talk about quantum mechanics for a little bit and how that could actually be the modern day warp. We'll see where the conversation leads. But before we get into that, some quick housekeeping. As Jordan mentioned, you can kind of buy some Lorehammer merchandise. Go to redbubble.com and you can get t-shirts, posters, stickers. I know stickers have become very popular lately. So yeah, go check out Redbubble. And we have on Discord. Come join our Discord. We got a lot of people on there. They're just doing fun little things, little games, sometimes little hobby contests, whatever they're up to on there. I introduced a new tag called the provisional tie. So if you do a one-time donation, you could get your darker green tag, which I know some people like. So there you go. Go be a tag whore. Collect them all like Pokemon.
And guys, if you want to support the show, join the Imperial Tithe for just $2.50 USDs a month. You can get an ad-free version of the show, and for $5 USDs a month, you could get a video version of the show. So come on in, come. It's fun. I think we got some bonus episodes behind the paywall too. Isn't that right, Mark?
There's nothing exclusive behind there, but
okay.
There are bonus episodes there technically.
Okay. Ad-free bonus episodes.
Yes, sir. Now that we have.
Join the movement, okay? Do it today.
Yeah, and if you guys do join the Imperial Tithe, that'll let you join us live while we record these. You'll be part of the live chat room. You can be a call-in guest at the end of the episode, but you got to join the Tithe so you can come join and hang out with us.
Yeah, been a lot of fun. That's how Nemo got his way onto the show. Just wiggled his way into a call-in. Now here he is.
And you've regretted it ever since.
Yeah. Well, let's get to today's episode. Demon Incursions, Warp Rift, and Demon Worlds. This is such a big topic when we're talking about the warp. And the warp is utilized in a number of different ways. Most commonly, we often think of like warp travel, or we think of warp communication. You know, we think of being lost in the warp, this ethereal spot where energy collides and you can't really understand anything, and then you get devoured by demons. But it's so much more than just that. The warp can interact with real space in the Immaterium and create some very interesting effects, such as, you know, warp rifts or the opposite could happen where the Immaterium gets stuck in the Immaterium, and then you get stuff like Demon Worlds where it's this half real, half energy type world that, you know, magic seems way more prevalent there, where mountains can be forged by gods, and there's actually rivers and lakes of blood, because it's not actually real blood, or it could be. It's the warp. Who fucking knows? So that's kind of what we're talking about today. What's your guys' kind of favorite? Let's do Chaos God. Just go around, and what's your favorite Chaos God? Just put us in the mood.
I'll go first. I like Grandfather Nurgle the best of the Chaos Gods, but I also like the Emperor's Children a lot, so it's between him and Slaanesh, but Nurgle was my first favorite, so I'm kind of loyal to that.
Okay, let's see if I can... we do have some good Nurgle demon worlds out there, so maybe we'll let you talk about them.
So excited.
I was gonna say Nurgle too. Yeah, I like Tzeentch. A little bit of some Tzeentch, but yeah, probably Nurgle.
Tzeentch is my least favorite of the Chaos Gods.
Oh, really?
It's just I don't know why. I've never liked Tzeentch or what he does. It's like, ooh, he's doing this, or is he? Or is it his plan? Or was it his plan? It's like that. I don't know why. That's always annoyed me.
You just have small brain, so you can't understand the grandeur of change.
Yeah. My brain is smooth, therefore I cannot understand the complexity and the twists of turns of Tzeentch's plan.
Exactly.
Tzeentch is psychic mastery without getting into degenerate mastery like Slaanesh. Just when you think you understand something completely and you have a complete technical understanding of something like an absolute savant of the arts, there's an aspect of madness. And because you're so focused on that technical mastery, you forgot to take account the madness, because part of the warp is madness. And you don't really get what Tzeentch is doing. It's not about understanding. It's about letting go of understanding to find a new layer of greater knowledge. It just blows your brain out. I love it. It's great. Like with the Thousand Suns. We saw Magnus look at that shattered glass, and it literally changed his world. A lot. Like when he looked at that shattered glass, he was probably looking at an aspect of Tzeentch, but a real damn small one, because it's not about I'm Tzeentch. Definitely Tzeentch.
Good answer. Yeah. Okay. I would go with Slaanesh typically. I like being excessive in what I get up to. It's a lifestyle choice, and gets you into trouble sometimes. And also you end up with 4 cats, and you're like, well, this ain't so bad. Let's get another. Let's get a 5th in the mix.
Is there a Warhammer like personality test to match you with your preferred Chaos God?
I'm sure.
I think there is.
There should be.
And I think we just did it.
I think we just did it.
Mark saying that he likes Slaanesh makes sense, because Slaanesh really feels like the Chaos God of the arts. I'm a massive nerd, so it's hard for me to get away from Tzeentch. Like you see that like blend into people. Like if someone really wants to smack things over the head orc style, how is it hard to not like Khorne? And so on.
Yeah.
Mark also does like 5 podcast episodes a week, and that's definitely excess to most people. So the God track.
Yeah. Yeah, it all checks out. All right, well, let's get into our episode notes now that we know who we hate and who we align with on the same side in the warp. Before we get too much into the warp, let's give some context. We're going to start with the Immaterium, and then we're going to jump into the Immaterium and give you like a little breakdown of that. Then we're going to talk about a thin veil between the realms and how to kind of mimic it, or not mimic it, how to kind of send some ripples and maybe even rip it. Then we're going to jump into Daemonic Incursions. Then we're going to go into warp rifts and finally talk about demon worlds. So yeah, let's start with the Immaterium, or the Immaterium. The Immaterium, or real space, is a physical universe governed by the laws of physics, where gravity, electromagnetism, and matter form the fragile construct of life. In contrast, the Immaterium, or warp, is a chaotic, hyperdimensional realm that defies natural law, a physics abyss where time spirals and reason falters. While the Immaterium thrives on order, the warp teems with malevolent entities like demons, enslavers, Psycherian driven by insatiable hungers to invade real space and consume mortal souls. The warp is shaped by the collective psychic emotions of sentient beings, with humanity playing a central role in both the archetype and its prey. In places where the barrier between dimension ruptures, warp rifts emerge, churning storms where the Immaterium spills into real space, fueling chaos incursions. If chaos influence continues unchecked, reality's boundaries may collapse, leaving the Materium consumed and reshaped into a realm of eternal madness. Yeah, the Materium's pretty easy to understand. It's just the real space. It's where we are right now. It's where the Milky Way galaxy, that is the Materium. And yeah, in 40K, it is based off it's 40,000 years into the human future, our kind of reality's future. So the same laws that apply now would essentially carry on and carry over to that. The warp makes things interesting, but gravity exists, electromagnetism, all those kind of things exist.
Indeed. And the yin to that yang is the Immaterium, known by many names: the Empyrean, the Ether, the Sea of Souls, the Realm of Chaos, and most simply as the Warp. It is a dark and unfathomable dimension of pure psychic energy. It is a shadowed echo of the material universe, vast and immeasurable, existing as both its sinister reflection and its unseen foundation. Beneath the fabric of real space, this ethereal realm churns with tempestuous power, its essence untethered by the laws of nature and reason. The warp is the crucible of all psychic might, the origin of what mortals might call sorcery or magic. From its boundless depths rise the terrifying chaos gods, godlike manifestations of raw emotion and belief, each commanding legions of demonic horrors. For those cursed with the knowledge of this truth, the term chaos and warp are often inseparable, for the Immaterium and the malevolent forces that dwell within it are one and the same. This malevolent plane is not a natural creation, but the psychic fallout of sentient thought itself. Every emotion, every ambition, every fear, and every desire across the galaxy bleeds into the warp, shaping its chaotic tides. It is a sea of raw emotion made manifest, a riot of clashing energies that defies comprehension, forever shifting and unstable.
Yeah, that's kind of the big key takeaway of how the warp operates on a very basic level. It's all emotions of sentient species kind of gets transformed into an energy form in the warp, which is like a parallel dimension to us. So yeah, when you're really angry, you start putting those emotions in and you start feeding Khorne, the god in the warp, of anger or hatred. These emotions too, depending on different emotions, have different power levels almost. There's anger, which is a very strong emotion, where there's love, which doesn't have the same type of power behind it almost, or there's probably better examples than those two. But the more powerful emotion you feel in the warp, the more powerful the manifestation that can form.
What emotion does Tzeentch channel? Is confusion an emotion?
It's that side of mastery that is. There's an overlap between Slaanesh and Tzeentch for mastery. And it's not that Slaanesh does not have a very real, very technical, very masterful side of it. It's that with Tzeentch, it gets a lot more arcane. And the arts are not any less complex than the sciences when you do it from a genuine effort of mastery. But there's that gap, and it fades away the minute you get into the real depth of mastery. Because when you have some of the finest engineers in the world, some of them will err more on the side of the art of engineering in terms of the creativity, as opposed to the hard sciences, and vice versa. You'll see that difference between Slaanesh and Tzeentch. And that's when you start to see the animosity from Khorne to those other two gods, that is Slaanesh and Tzeentch, kick in. Oh, yeah, that's true. There is that curiosity for Tzeentch. by Fuzz.
Yeah, Fuzz says that
But
in
then
the chat.
again, you can't say Slaanesh ain't curious.
Yeah, when you said engineer, that kind of made me giggle because it made me think of everyone in my family's a coder of some sort, and the frustration of it not working and then it randomly start to work. That fits perfectly with Zinch. Zinch is the god of all coders.
Give the machine spirit a kick.
Skeleton says conniving, scheming, or pure curiosity is my interpretation. Change is often a common one associated with him too. Like the feeling of not wanting change can be a very powerful emotion. The fear of the unknown,
Okay.
and even just that desire to change thing. That's another powerful emotion. You're not happy with your circumstances, and now you have this deep emotional drive that you have to do something about your situation. It's eating you alive. It goes back to the warp being like there are definitely stronger emotions than there are weak emotions. There are definitely the two, there's many different power levels of emotion. So when we're looking at the chaos gods, they kind of eat up that big one, like hate or like change, where curiosity, that's a good one, but I don't know if it's as much of emotion, more so than like a state of mind, like an action. But
Well, you could be excited by curiosity,
but then you're just excited though, are you not? Like it maybe I'm
no, because if you can be excited for change or want to change something, you could be excited for the change, the desire to change, or the fear of change. Fear is the emotion, but the change is driving it. So that kind of makes sense why those are the emotions that fuel into Zinch, because there aren't a lot of other, at least in my mind, the other chaos gods don't really get anything out of fear for most of the time. They get it from. Oh, go
I
ahead,
have an
Nemo.
example. Because within the
Please.
Horus Heresy, we see Psychers able to create very real realities within their dreamscapes to the point where they're genuine places where they can go to accomplish things. Within the Horus Heresy, we see one particular Psyker, and he interacts with the Emperor at a very, very, very special historic place. And when he's in that space, that psychic technical mastery to create it accurately in a way that's visceral might be very Zinch. Whereas the ability to smell the perfect aroma within that space might be Slaanesh. Maybe that's a good analog.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the whole concept of liminality and like liminal spaces, and basically like the transition of going from one space to another, or like one career to another, or one relationship to another. Like that transition period is like people call it liminality. There's also, and I just thought this would be maybe even like a fun like fan fiction or something in Warhammer, because in sort of the like UFO space, a lot of people report or claim during liminality they have like more experiences of like strange phenomena like UFOs or Bigfoot or what have you. So you could say like Zinch in that liminal space where it's kind of confusing, unknown. You don't know. The future seems very uncertain. He could be, he could manifest him some way. But I don't know, just a funny, an interesting thought that could maybe fit into some lore. So should we continue? Among the legends whispered by Xenos and human cultures alike, the Immaterium is said to be the final resting place of the dead. Souls untethered from the flesh are thought to drift into this nightmarish underworld, a destination of eternal torment or disintegration. Whether a soul finds peace, slavery, or annihilation within its psychic tides depends upon the will of the chaos gods, or the strength of the soul to resist their grasp. The Immaterium is not merely another dimension, but a realm of infinite danger and sinister mystery. It is an ocean of endless chaos and malice, where the currents of thoughts and emotions become storms of destruction, and where the eternal war for the fate of all souls rages ceaselessly. To gaze upon it is to court madness. To enter it is to risk annihilation, and to understand it fully is to know despair.
Yeah, and this is another kind of aspect that the warp kind of has. We've talked about, using it for space travel, communications, and we've talked about kind of a little bit more. But then this also afterlife kind of side effect that it's hard to prove that one, like that's definitely kind of what happens and is implied. When you die, your soul goes into the warp, and if it's powerful enough, it can battle off the will of the gods from feasting on it, but most likely it's going to get devoured. And we know, like with the Eldar, they have a very close relationship to Slaanesh. When they die, their souls will go to Slaanesh specifically. When I think of afterlife, I grew up in church, so I think of like heaven, and there just doesn't seem to be a heaven though. In the warp, there's lots of demons that will devour your soul. There's lots of hells in the warp, but not that happy place.
I mean, that really fits with the setting. In the grim darkness of the future, there's only war. Even in death, there is only war, because now your soul's fighting a war to not be devoured.
It will seek death and not find it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one major thing about the Immaterium is that, especially in 40K, the barrier between thought and reality, because of the warp, if you know how to do it, it's either blurred or non-existent. Thing is, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
Yeah.
It's kind of new agey. It's like, oh, if you just manifest this thing, and then the next thing you know, you manifest something that like eats your face off.
Every time.
It's funny you say that, because I literally, so every now and then a sewer roach crawls out of a drain here in Phoenix, and it drives me insane. So I was on the East Coast visiting. They don't have the same sewer roach problem, and I was looking at my parents' drain like, oh, it's cool that they don't have to cover their drains because roaches don't come out of here. And then I heard my dad scream, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? A cockroach just fell on my head. I was like, oh no, I manifested that.
And that's the warp.
Yeah, the warp is at my parents' house, if anyone wants to know. So, a thin veil between realms. The boundary between the Immaterium and the warp is not immutable. It shifts and falters across the galaxy, its strength varying with circumstance, both natural and unnatural. In certain places, the veil grows perilously thin, and the insidious influence of the Immaterium seeps through like poison into an open wound. These breaches may be fleeting or eternal, spanning vast regions or confined to the narrowest corridors of space. Their origins are as diverse as their horrors, some born of cruel chance, others of deliberate work of heretical chaos cults. In many cases, these rifts are the byproduct of humanity's hubris, isn't everything? The lingering scars of reckless experiments conducted in the dark age of technology. Other instances arise from psychic cataclysms or the explosive release of emotion, a great massacre, a surge of primal fear, or the despair of countless deaths concentrated in a single place. That sounds a lot like what people attribute modern current day hauntings to, is this kind of stuff.
Yeah, even the chat, they're talking about the warp is like tulpas, which are kind of like thought beings, I believe, where a bunch of people think about it and then they manifest some type of tulpa.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, sorry not to get it too deep into the topic of like strange phenomena, but there is a lot of people that suspect it has something to do with consciousness, but that is sort of like the warp too, right? Like the warp is intertwined with your own consciousness. I think it goes deeper than just your emotions, but it's like your consciousness is somehow interacting with it to make it manifest, or perhaps add substance to the warp. I don't know if that's the right word for it. But.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's interesting too. Like,
sorry, go for it.
No, you.
Oh well, a fundamental part of the entire 40K universe is that belief has power, like Spear of Destiny. The sheer amount of supercharged belief of how many hopes, how many dreams, how many religions, how many feelings so visceral that it might, in the moment, paint the wall with an indelible sheen of human blood, seen only to the eye, but the mind's eye. That means something. It has impact. It's if something is so real in your mind that you can feel it and you're a psyker, you can blow people's heads off their shoulders with that. Belief really does have power.
Sure. Yeah, and it's interesting too, like the warp. It's tied to anything with a consciousness, but it definitely seems to be tied even more strongly to humanity for some reason. What that is, who knows? But humans are usually like the prized creatures that the warp want to try to devour or make their servants. They also seem to have the most kind of impact on it, whether it's because we're just so numerous and like obviously a human doesn't have as much soul power as an Eldar, but just since there's so many of us, we just have a huge factor on it. Special bond.
Where the veil between realities thins, the unnatural manifests, its presence both unpredictable and incomprehensible. Such regions are whispered of in fear, branded as cursed or haunted by those who dare approach. Voices seem to call from unseen corners, movement flickers at the edge of vision, and the mind itself becomes a battlefield of nightmares and walking hallucinations. Time may falter, grinding backwards or spiraling into chaos. Temperatures might plummet to an Arctic extreme or shift erratically, defying reason. Even the most advanced auspexes and scanners fall to confusion, returning nonsensical or conflicting readings. Those who enter such accursed spaces feel as, or nah, those who enter such accursed spaces feel an oppressive, indescribable wrongness, a malevolent presence that crawls beneath the skin. Some report phantom sensations, the acrid tang of burning flesh, a prickling at the nape of the neck, or nauseating weight of unseen eyes upon them. These are the tainted echoes of the warp, slipping through the cracks in reality to erode both body and soul. Whenever the warp's presence bleeds into the Immaterium, sanity falters, reason crumbles, and existence itself is warped into a terrifying parody of order. Such places are grim reminders of the galaxy's frailty before the power of chaos. As I'm reading this, it really just reminds me of the Secret Level episode that came out. And I'm not going to be the one to spoil it for people, but there's a lot of really cool warp stuff and psyker stuff that happens in that episode.
Yeah, I had like a small critique for that show. It's just if you don't know anything about 40K, you're like, what in the hell is happening? And yeah, just because with the warp, you don't know what's gonna happen with it. It's just crazy. Like, well, now there's this blob demon thing that can stop time, and like now gravity doesn't exist, and it just throws you for a whole loop. Great fucking animation though. Great show.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I heard that was a very consistent complaint from new people where they're just like, I don't know what's happening, but I like it.
Because the one thing that's really neat about the warp is it goes out of its way to not only make a mockery of the physical reality, but your personal perception and the perception of your understanding of the perception of physical reality. It'll slap you silly about what you think you know. And that's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shall I?
Um,
Yeah, Purge did one. That's a good comment. I like it. Tulpa is a thought construct that can interact with physical reality from Buddhist teachings. The live chat is going nuts because there's a very real link from the occult and the warp. Because throughout the perception of the Imperium, the warp isn't a good thing. It's tainted. It's unholy.
yeah.
It won't just destroy you. It'll destroy your ability to not only have a role in human society, but in your connection to the Divine Emperor. And there's also the fact that even before heresy, pre-heresy, when we saw Imperial citizens and Marines first interacting with the warp, they felt that it was dirty, and in some cases even unholy then, before the Imperial cult came around. And meanwhile, we have the live chat in the background just going nuts on the occult nonsense. If you're not seeing it, you're missing out.
Yeah. I love that there's no good spot in the warp for your soul to go to. It's just all gonna be bad for you. When you die, your soul gets devoured. And like even the Emperor, the Emperor protects in the afterlife. It's like, does the Emperor actually have a realm, or did you just get devoured by a demon? I think it like goes into that once again, like emotions and power levels. Like it seems like negative emotions will affect you more deeper. How often do you stew over something that is just negative, as opposed to like counting your blessings, or living in like that, oh, I had a good meal and now that will satisfy me. It's easier to go down that path of like just raw bad emotion. So you get that just amplified in the warp, where, I just wonder why there isn't a good place to go to. And it just, positive emotions just don't affect it the same way. It's just not enough of it. It's not strong enough.
Shall I continue, or you guys got a shot for it? All right. You gave me a fun one there, Mark. Let's talk about demonic incursions. To pierce the veil between the Immaterium and the mortal realm, a breach in the very fabric of reality, a warp rift must occur. These wounds in existence range from ephemeral cracks to yawning chasms that allow the legions of the damned to pour forth. A quick note about the legions of the damned: they aren't necessarily just demons themselves. They can be literally just about everything. They can be incredibly, I struggle to use the word diverse, but they can be. You don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. Even Xenos, man, like we often think even like Legion of the Damned is like just renegade humans or whatever, but like, man, it'd be full of all types of crazy Xenos creatures and all types of craziness.
Yeah, you never know if your Cthulhu clone is physical, warp, bit of both. You never know.
Never know.
The scale of these rifts can be as minor as a thinning in the dimensional boundary, or as apocalyptic as the immense eye of terror in the voracious maelstrom, cosmic scars upon the universe themselves. Such rifts may arise by chance, spawned by the capricious tides of the warp, or through deliberate acts of malice. The chaos gods and their mortal worshippers conjure these breaches with profane rituals, vile blood sacrifices, or the exploitation of warp storms. At times, the collective agony and despair of mortal suffering can inadvertently rend the barriers between realms, birthing portals for demons to spill into real space. Even the cataclysmic failure of warp technology, such as you got your Gellerfields and you got your warp generators themselves, your warp engines themselves. That and maybe something that other races might have, but that's the Imperial example. That, or the uncontrolled psychic outburst of a rogue psyker, can crack upon reality, unleashing horrors untold. When the conditions are ripe, such as during warp storms or sorceress rites, the veil between dimensions weakens enough for demons to possess mortal hosts. These unfortunate souls become living constructs, opening pathways through which entire demonic hosts may surge into the physical universe. The incursion of these infernal entities taints everything they touch, corrupting planets until they are subsumed into the Immaterium itself, twisted into grotesque demon worlds where reality warps to the whims of chaos. Not all rifts endure. Many flicker out within moments, hours, for chaos and its correlation with time is inherently unstable. Demons caught in real space when their portal collapses are doomed as unrelenting drain of chaos energy, and the material universe will swiftly erode their essence. Yet, some breaches are far more enduring. The Eye of Terror, born over 10 millennia ago, during the catastrophic birth of She Who Thirsts, Slaanesh, stands as the most infamous warp rift in Imperial space. A purple-red stain on the galactic heavens, visible from half of the Immaterium, it is a haven for the unnumbered demon worlds, traitor legions, the lost and the damned, and the horrors of the warp. Close in behind is the Maelstrom, a swirling vortex of corruption near the galactic core, home to renegades, pirates, Chaos Space Marine warbands, Xenos, and even more, lesser known yet no less deadly, we have warp rifts scattered across the galaxy. The heart of darkness near the feral world of Attila, the engulfing storm of judgment that chokes the Kara Dryad sector, the abyssal Hell's Gullet threatening the Beryllian system, and the maddening, screaming vortex, a chaos. Words, and the maddening, screaming vortex, a gateway to the chaos-infested realms on the border of the Cronus Expanse. No, Coronis Expanse. On the border of the Coronis Expanse. Off to you, Mark.
Yeah, it's these rifts, they kind of just start to ripple. We mentioned that time becomes, or these rifts become more likely when sorcerers are doing their rituals. When you sacrifice your 47 virgins and a goat, you initiate the secret ritual, and now these rifts can start to flicker in and flood your planet with demons or fling your planet into the warp. But yeah, we'll carry on reading. However, the greatest and most terrifying rift of all time is the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift. Born from the culmination of the Chaos God's waxing power during the catastrophic 13th Black Crusade, its emergence shattered the galaxy. When the fortress world of Cadia fell, the sheer strain upon the fabric of real space tore it apart, leaving the Imperium divided by a wound so vast it now spans the galaxy itself. The Cicatrix Maledictum is the bleeding scar of malevolence, the ultimate testament to the Chaos God's influence and fragility of the mortal reality. The Great Rift, a seething scar of warp-born corruption, stretches like a gaping wound from the Eye of Terror to the galactic west to the insidious Hadex anomaly in the east. It is a phenomenon of unparalleled devastation, visible across countless worlds and heralding demonic incursions on a scale unimaginable to humanity or any other sentient species. This cosmic rift has severed the Imperium in two, shrouding the so-called Imperium nihilists in darkness, beyond the light of the Emperor's sacred Astronomicon. In this forsaken realm, interstellar travel and communication falter, plunging humanity's fragile bonds into chaos. This was pretty cool consequence of like 8th edition when it came out. This is when they ripped the galaxy in half. And even just the way they did it, where they ripped it from the Eye of Terror and kind of Cadia, and then they carried it down to the Maelstrom, and then carried it on to the next big one across the galaxy. Yeah, it's cool, that whole ritual that they did where they had to find all these columns and destroy columns. And when they did, then they kind of opened up this rip all the way across the galaxy.
Yeah, and there were a lot of cool supplements that came out for the tabletop at the time that had some really cool, some warp relics, some really cool relics for all the factions. Some of the most insane broken things I've ever seen were in those supplements. It was a lot of fun that time.
The warp was playing shenanigans on the rules for sure.
Oh, dude, the orcs in 8th edition had a busted gun to begin with, the shock attack gun. It was so stupidly broken. They made a relic that was more broken, and it was like a 50-point unit. So I had a guy that would spam 3 of them plus that relic, and it's like, okay, I vaporized this, and that. He just killed 4 units a turn, and there was nothing I could do about it. It was so frustrating.
Then nice. You see on the fluff side, the Imperium getting nerfed incredibly hard, because now you have an entire warp rift just sitting there. How do you get communications, supplies, troops, and just substantial information through that? It's kind of like, when you consider how large the Imperium is, it's like, why aren't they bigger? Why aren't they kicking more ass? And then when you literally rip them in half with the manifestation in hell, it's like, yeah, I could see it. I can see it.
Hard to manage an empire ripped in half like that.
Well, there's that one joke that's like, the Imperium has the exact same problem the modern day military has, and it's paperwork. There's just so much paperwork and so many communication issues that it's just a nightmare to do anything, especially on that expanse.
And in this case, we don't have hell, we just have HR.
True.
The Great Rift's presence threatens the very survival of humanity. its birth a testament to the unrelenting malice of the Chaos Gods. Warp rifts, the breaches through which the Immaterium bleeds into real space, are often the product of warp storms, turbulent, rolling expanses of malevolence within the realm of chaos. These storms mirror their wrath in real space, disrupting the currents of the warp and choking the pathways of interstellar travel. Their unpredictable nature makes them a source of terror, for they may isolate a single world or engulf entire sectors of the galaxy. Yeah, so that's a kind of cool way to look at it too. Some warp storms are like mortal creature and rituals, and they're spawned that way by doing the right kind of things. But also sometimes the warp just becomes super turbulent in one spot and then explodes into real space in and of itself. And those emotions could have been from 10,000 years ago. They could have been from the future. All we know is they just decide to combine into this storm of warp energy and then explode into real space, which is unpredictable as well.
Yeah, to make the warp any good, I think you have to make it random and unpredictable. It can't be completely controllable, obviously. Obviously, chaos. We wouldn't even have chaos if it was just predictable and orderly. But yeah.
Yeah, and even like chaos is like by the word itself, even they can't get their own shit straight, you know?
Yep.
I don't know why, but when you said an intense emotion can open a rift, it just had a mental image of a dude stubbing his toe and screaming so loud that a rift opened up right above him because he was just that
Oh,
angry in the
God.
pain.
Yeah, latent psychers would be the craziest thing. Like you don't even know you're this super powerful psyker, then boom, you stub your toe and open a warp rift and damn your whole planet to hell.
Yeah, the greater demons of Khorne are coming out. You're that angry over stubbing your toe, and it's just ruining your planet.
Oh, no, I got to do a bit of nerding. Then you got the All Guardsmen party from that Dark Heresy green text, where you had one of the major entities. Spoiler alert! Meet me if you don't want to hear it.
Lay it on
Where
us.
you had one of the major BBEGs, big bad evil guy, be literally a latent psyker who stole everybody's luck. You tried to shoot something, he stole a portion of your dice roll, like a percentage. It wasn't a save, it was a percentage. It was nasty. It made for an interesting narrative aspect while being a fantastic example of warp fuckery.
Interesting.
That'd be super cool to play against.
Like a part of that's had them literally going to the armory, getting the oldest lasguns they could find from Mars, from pre-heresy, from a major armory, and trying to min-max safe rolls against the guy with old as fuck lasguns that literally had on the serial number 0000000 and maybe 12, 7. Like so early production, literally the old reliable beat stick in lasgun form.
Cool. When these storms intensify, they pull at the fabric of reality, straining it to their breaking point or tearing it asunder. The unlucky worlds caught in their grip become accursed playgrounds for demons, their inhabitants subjected to unspeakable horrors until the storm's furies abate. Some storms, driven by the self-sustaining energies of chaos, linger for millennia, trapping planets and systems in a swirling limbo of despair. One of the most cataclysmic warp storms in human history condemned Terra itself to isolation during the Age of Strife, a grim epoch that spanned 5,000 standard years. It was a time of madness and ruin as demons roamed unchecked, devouring the souls of the damned. Yet, despite the horrors wrought by these storms, the warp remains a paradox, both a curse and a necessity. Without it, there would be no psychers, no interstellar travel, no communication across the void of space, and the very survival of humanity hinges on the warp treacherous tides. Yeah, isn't that kind of the interesting thing about the warp? Like, yeah, without it, there wouldn't even be the next galaxy over the next solar system over might not even be colonized. Because even to get to the next system over, it's like, I always forget, but it's like 10 light years, it's impossible to get over there, man. We can't get anywhere in our galaxy. It's so massively big. So even just humanity and all the aliens, without the warp and all its stuff that it causes, it would be so isolating.
Well, it's kind of like how we talked about in the Dark Angels episode. It was going to take the Lion 7 months to recall his legion and redirect them to Terra. Imagine how long that would take without the warp if they just had to fly by wire to get there. They would have missed the whole heresy and been in 40K without ever having done anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you get an Imperium without the warp pre-webway? Because they never got the webway, so they're completely stuck to the warp. You don't have the Primarchs without the Emperor's deal with the gods, and you don't have the Imperium without the warp's ability to provide logistics, communication, and transport. I like it. They screwed themselves over in so many ways.
Yeah, another fun storm that happened at a good example is the Tau Empire was trapped in a warp storm in its very early history, secluding it. And sometimes, you could be cut off from the rest of the galaxy, but still thriving in this little pocket of real space surrounded by warp storm madness. And you might not even be aware because they're just some filthy minor Xenos. The warp is just, you're not going to get some good measurements on it. You're not going to get good knowledge on how it works ever. Even if you try to study it, it's just going to be chaos.
Yep. All right. Shall we get into Voidcraft? Through its shifting currents, Voidcraft traversed the stars, crossing light years in mere moments, an impossibility with mundane reaction drives. The Imperium's fragile unity relies on the warp, with its ships shielded by Geller fields and buoyed by the Emperor's divine will. The navigators, psychic mutants attuned to the Immaterium, guide vessels through its maddening eddies, while Astropaths use its currents to carry messages across unimaginable distances. The Emperor himself, a beacon of power, enables humanity to endure this perilous dance with chaos. Excuse me. Yet the warp is a double-edged blade, its power drawing forth the horrors of the dark gods. The chaos gods feast upon the psychic emanations of mortals, their essence nourished by humanity's thoughts, fears, and desires. Each deity feeds on a facet of the human condition: rage, lust, despair, and ceaseless hunger for change. This vile symbiosis binds humanity and chaos in a cycle of ruin. Mortal failings empower the gods, and the gods in turn stoke these very failings to ensure their unholy sustenance. Is this sort of like Warhammer's version of entropy? Everything just decays, but it's actually just the warp.
Yeah, almost.
What's the emotion?
I was listening to a podcast about quantum dynamics today by Sean Carroll, and he was talking about black holes and studying black holes, and how he describes them as entropy. And we often think of black holes as this way to kind of transport from one spot of the galaxy to another, or what's in a black hole. It's just like data. It's just energy almost. It was very interesting, how much of this stuff is in our psyche that people are just writing down before the science actually proves stuff. Not saying that the warp is real in real life, but man, does it operate very similar to black holes and shit. And the entropy that causes it, and just it's just a state of decay. And once you go into it, you're just decaying. Yeah,
it seems like I guess entropy is a little more predictable and observable, and you can kind of measure the rate of entropy, whereas obviously with the warp you can't measure anything. So
well, then in that case, the heat death of the universe would be emotional, not necessarily nuclear or fusion energetic, because everything ultimately comes down to emotions, to feeling when you bring the warp involved. Or would it? Maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but it feels like it would.
I think you're onto something there, personally.
Because if it's emotional, then just by having living beings, the 40K universe can truly be infinite, because by having emotions, you have that shadow of the warp, as opposed to the shadow in the warp of the NIDS. But there's a reflection there. So for as long as there's basically a shield generator, you have a shield. Therefore, as long as things are living, you have that. And the warp is constantly pouring onto the material universe, pretty much breaking thermodynamics. It's bringing energy into the world from thought, which is a very occult concept into itself. I love the chat. The chat's going nuts. I love it. When I'm in here, I'm participating in the chat. When I'm not in here and I'm present in the live stream, I'm participating in the chat. Chat's nuts. Love the chat. But it's like you have that dynamic where it's like belief is creating matter because the warp exists, because of how the warp exists alongside emotions. A good part of what made Horus what he was his emotions, and Magnus and all the Primarchs and the Emperor. And that's just talking about the human-centric nonsense. That's without getting into the Eldar stuff, who have a far greater command of it all, where they're making damn Wraithbone from their emotions, which is one of the greatest technically attuned materials you can get. Like, I'm just saying, Siege is pretty neat. Because when you get a Chaos God, it's just that. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right. As humanity's reach has expanded across the galaxy, so too has its psychic potential. Once those who wielded the warp's power, shamans, witchers, seers, and such, were rare and shunned, their abilities often mistaken for sorcery. Now, psychers rise in even greater numbers on an evolutionary shift that reshapes mankind's destiny. They harvest the Immaterium to unleash devastating energies, traverse the void, and perform miracles, both wondrous and horrifying. Yet the burgeoning power comes at a terrible cost, for the warp's touch is never benign, and those who draw upon it walk a razor's edge between greatness and damnation. Thus, the Great Rift looms as the ultimate reminder of the warp's peril and its inescapable grip on humanity. It is a chasm that divides the galaxy and lays bare the fragility of mortal existence in a cosmos where the Immaterium's endless hunger promises only despair. Each time a psyker reaches into the chaotic, swirling void of the warp, they create a disturbance, a ripple in the unnatural flow of the Immaterium. This fleeting disruption may vanish without consequence, or it may draw the currents to it until a warp storm brews, its energy swelling into a violent tempest, feeding the insatiable appetites of the chaos god. The smallest of psychic aberrations can be a spark that ignites a cosmic blaze, a blaze that spreads beyond control, consuming worlds in its dark embrace.
Yeah. Crazy. It's interesting. Yeah, that they have the ability to create something out of nothing, out of emotion, like you're saying. But every time that you reach into warp,
would that be like
not
ex
consequence-free.
nihilo? Like if you're creating something from the warp? No, it wouldn't be ex nihilo. Anyways,
what is that? I've never heard that term.
Like from nothing. So like the theistic view is like God created the universe from nothing. So like no matter space or time did not exist until ex nihilo. But yeah, just going back into that same conversation about like, does the warp sustain the universe and does the universe create the warp? Chicken and egg.
And it eventually, even creates that feedback loop where the warp is self-sustaining, the Immaterium world self-sustaining.
Yeah.
And then,
it's a mind F, that one.
It's a very deep and interesting episode for us and the chat. I love it.
Well, Jordan, in that case, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Do you, from a theological sense, so therefore from a warp sense, how do you feel about the following statement? From nothing comes nothing.
Well, yeah, I guess that would be the. Well, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I'd have to think about it. What are you getting at? Do you have a thought on that? Did you hear me there? I don't know if he got me there.
Oh,
Maybe
damn. I
he-
didn't realize my mic was muted.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
he was playing into the nothingness.
Yeah.
He asked a question and then had nothing.
Not on purpose. I was literally just waffling on that. I would tie it into ego death, and no one goes looking for ego death, but instead I had microphone death, and it somehow managed to acquire the same thing. But it's like you have there's never really truly an absence of nothingness. I'm not trying. I swear I'm not trying to Kafka trap you or anything, something like that. It's like, do you maybe think that a nothingness is possible, regardless of what universe you want to discuss? I guess 40K is the topical topic, but
Yeah, I guess in the 40K universe, like the question of how did the universe come into existence, you would assume, like, if you're just guessing, I guess, and you're not like the director of future director of creativity or whatever, like Mark is going to be.
Yes.
And you were to write this, like, yeah, would the warp precede, like, would the Immaterium precede the Materium? I would assume that would be my like base assumption. And then the Materium was sort of somehow manifested from the Immaterium.
I was gonna say I would disagree and think it would go the other way, the same way that Slaanesh was created. I'm gonna say that loosely by the Eldar. The Materium could have created the Immaterium just with our emotions and whatever was going on, put it out into the universe, and it had to go somewhere, and that's where it went. It created the warp.
I think I'm gonna go in a middle ground and say that could they be created at the same time? Because the Materium affects the Immaterium, but also there's just formless wastes in the beginning. There's just swirling energy that wasn't able to kind of have consciousness or take form. It was later that those kind of entities kind of happen and stuff. But the warp was still around.
Yeah, that would be my
assumption. Kind of recall.
Yeah, the warp itself exists, but the creatures within the warp don't have any form. They're formless and void, if you will, until consciousness interacts with the warp.
I'm mostly sorry, Mark, but I'm gonna pull a Horus Heresy quote out of my ass for you from the Outcast Dead, where it explicitly says the warp makes a mockery of linear time.
yeah, and that's the other fucking thing about the warp. It doesn't operate with time, man. Like, just because Slaanesh was birthed in M30 doesn't mean that Slaanesh is only around M30 and beyond. Once Slaanesh was made, went across all of the warp, which is across all time, and therefore Slaanesh was always there, even in the beginning.
That quote could also mean that we're all right, that I was right, that there was a Materium and we made the warp, but because the warp makes a mockery of time, it went back beforehand, fed things to feed itself to make itself bigger. We can all be right at the same time here. Go full Zinch on this one. We're all right.
But then the warp has entropy.
The warp makes a mockery of it. There is no entropy in the warp.
Oh.
Yeah, what now?
Oh.
Zinch isn't even my god, bro. What's up?
I don't have gods. Freaking Chaos Undivided. But I like that. I'm going to chew on that. That's neat.
Do it. Write that down for listener lore, somebody. There's your prompt. Write that story and Mark will read it.
It's true.
All right. The power of the warp is a dangerous currency, and each psyker in their hubris contributes to the ever-growing web of chaos. Each act of drawing upon the Immaterium plants a seed, small, fragile, but one that could take root and fester into a storm that calls forth the might of a demon legion. When the storm intensifies, when the psychic powers reach their zenith, the gates of reality open, and hell itself descends upon the material of the world. And Purge said, Purge's quote went away. Purge said the Immaterium and the void would be birthed at the same time. However, it would not be the warp being absence of substance.
Oh, that's neat.
I love that.
Yeah, these ontological categories are hard.
All right, on today's episode, a full theological discussion of the chicken or the egg.
Yeah.
Can we get a
But
full ontological breakdown of the lore bearer heresy?
Lord Bearer heresy. This paragraph that I just read, though, it kind of reminds me of I've mentioned it before, but the Barry Dagger, the story about how Mortarion fell to Nurgle, because even from a young age there was that little seed that was planted, and then it kind of erupted into this giant thing when he was in the warp in a storm where he finally pledged his allegiance. So it's fun to see literal references of that in the lore.
Yeah.
Invasion by the forces of the Immaterium is not simply a clash of armies. It is the unmaking of reality, free from the shackles of the physical realm. Daemons slip between the veil of existence, able to appear and vanish at will. Undeterred by mortal limitations, they may mass for a grand. I keep saying great. They may amass for a grand assault, a writhing horde bent on total annihilation, or they may hunt in smaller packs, creeping through the shadows of a planet, terrorizing the living, slaughtering with mindless glee, and enslaving mortals in twisted rites. At the heart of these invasions lies the terrible consequence for the weakest of minds, those mortals whose psychic potential, no matter how slight, is stirred by the influx of warp energy, become the first to suffer. Some are consumed entirely, igniting an inferno of psychic flame, turning to stone, or suffering their very brains explode in a final dreadful release. Others are shattered by the forces at play, their bodies twisted by poltergeist activity, or blasted apart by random violent outbursts of psychokinesis. That line is kind of funny when you think about my toe stubbing example. Imagine you stub your toe and then you just explode. Your family's watching. They'd be like, "What happened?
What the hell happened?
Now their terror is bringing the demons in because they opened the rift."
Everyone, remain calm.
Yeah, remain calm. The very fabric of reality frays, and the madness stalks the living. Screams echo across the land, accompanied by eerie whispers, while unnatural stenches foul the air. To fight against such an invasion is to face the impossible. Conventional weapons, garrisons, and fortifications offer no solace. Demons cannot be driven back by mere steel or gunpowder, for every blow struck against them feeds the energy that sustains their existence in real space: fear, hatred, and despair. To battle them is to feed their strength, perpetuating the cycle of torment. The only hope lies in sealing the warp rift, cutting off their connection to the Immaterium, depriving them of the power that holds them to this world.
Yeah, so a question that's pretty easily answerable, but we should ask it anyways, is like, why? Why does all this happen? Like, why do these warp rifts happen? Like, to what end are the chaos gods getting out of all this madness? And, well, they get to eat your soul. And ultimately, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. They just want to come and eat your soul, and in so doing so, they become more powerful themselves. They got their own insatiable hunger to fulfill.
I'm ready to piss off all the orc players by saying Khorne is the true orc god. You have those orcs, and they're the happiest when they're under Khorne, because they don't gotta ask the question of if you're being clever when you're killing, or if you're killing by being clever.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the happiest orcs are the Khorne orcs. So, on that sense, the joy of combat will definitely feed into one of them. Maybe the joy of discovery feeds into the other. The joy of pursuing the idea of pursuit to Slaanesh. The idea of decay, life, and renewal, which is inexorable into itself. It's hard to not be alive and feel that satisfaction. I really do feel that chaos is self-fulfilling.
It can
Yeah.
be. I see that. Especially Nurgle, that most people just think of as the god of decay and stuff, but he's also got rebirth as part of his thing. It might not be a pretty rebirth, but there is a rebirth from his gifts that he bestows upon his children.
Yeah, like even just taking it to like Mother Nature. When an animal dies and a tree absorbs its nutrients in the ground and it grows and stuff, and then it falls over and rots away, and then the next thing grows off it, and so on, so forth. It's just changing one shape of energy for another, essentially.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Flies bursts from your chest, and from his chest bursts the fetid beauty of just maggots. Yep, that sounds about right.
Don't like that.
Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
And very gross descriptions to Nurgle.
Exactly. All right.
To fight a demon.
Fight a demon. Where were we? Depriving them of the power. All right. So yet even sealing the rift is not a guarantee of safety. For the true horror of a demon incursion lies in the unfathomable nature of the invader's goals. Oh, there you are, Mark. You're a little bit ahead of it. Unlike the Tyranids, whose drive is to consume and survive, Daemons wage war for reasons beyond mortal understanding. A Daemon Lord may seek to massacre a million souls, reclaim an ancient artifact, or avenge some forgotten grudge. Sometimes their goals are incomprehensible, driven not by logic or hunger, but by their intrinsic twisted nature. Other times, they may act on whims, decisions shaped by the capricious, chaotic hunger that defines their existence. That whole back half felt like that was exclusively talking about Tzeentch.
I kind of felt like it was talking about Nurgle.
Well, Nurgle knows what he's doing. There's a plan. There's a reason he's doing it.
As opposed to Tzeentch wants to convince you there's one?
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. There may or may not be a reason Tzeentch is doing it. It might be for his 5D chess, or it might be because he thinks it's funny. You'll never know.
Well, degeneracy means aside from Slaanesh. What does Slaanesh consume then? Because I find it hard to believe that it's genuinely the emotion of itself, even though that's the fuel. Like, when you reach the complexity of being Chaos God, can it really be that simple? Because it's the grand machine of life, the grand machine of war, the grand machine of imagination. But what really is Slaanesh's grand machine of sustenance? That's one thing I never actually managed to wrap my head around. Genuine question.
One could argue it's pain because of how kinky some of their models and stuff get. One could be it's just excess of pleasure, just kind of gluttony. Because I've seen it talked about before, but Slaanesh would also have the sin of gluttony if we're talking about sins in it, because eating to excess is something that none of the other gods would really value, but Slaanesh would, because you're just serving your self-fulfilling desire to just keep eating and eating and eating and eating. It's that drive of I want that really fuels what Slaanesh goes off of.
Yeah,
Well,
like greed.
Yeah, greed would be another one.
The 7 deadly sins. Yeah, that, because you don't really see, I dig it.
Definitely greed would be a great emotion to sum it up. Like excess, yeah, that's an easy one, but like what exactly is that? Well, it's just ultimately greed.
Yeah, Purge added in the chat lust. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit for Slaanesh, because it's the first one everybody thinks of, but lust, greed, gluttony.
But yeah, like lust is just greed. Like I want that. I want that.
Oh, true.
Like it's just
rage. Because rage isn't really a corn thing now, is it? Like, don't get me wrong, there's the blood for the blood god charging it head in, but there's still the aspect of martial mastery, but losing yourself to that is very Slaanesh.
Yeah. No, I think losing yourself to rage is still more corn, evidenced by his berserkers.
Well, I think too, like the gods can both be gaining from it, and they could both even be gaining 50-50 as well. So if you're super angry and that is your excess, I don't know, I feel like you're feeding both. Because maybe you're angry for no reason, and like it's not genuine anger. It's like it doesn't matter what it is. It's a piece of shit. This pen is a piece of shit. Everything sucks. The lighter's not broken, but you hate the fucking lighter. You know, it's just excessive anger for its own sake.
So, because Khorne likes excessive anger and excessive violence, does that mean Khorne is now a subdemon of Slaanesh? Because the warp has no sense of time. So Korn was there before Slaanesh, but now Slaanesh is there. Slaanesh is now here, and Korn's under Slaanesh because Korn feeds Slaanesh the excess. That's my new head.
Korn would like to meet you in a dark back alley.
Oh, I
have
wish
some
he
words.
would.
And Slaanesh would too, also, but for a different reason.
These hands are rated E for everyone. I hope they're ready for that.
Maybe the real demon is Chaos Undivided.
Maybe the real friends were the ones we made along the way.
Speaking of friends, we have an entire legion of them. Demon legions. They are a force to battle of unreason, a whirlwind of despair and madness that tears the fabric of reality itself. It is to struggle against an enemy whose every thought is alien, whose every action defies logic, whose every presence poisons the air with despair. For the Imperium, such knowledge must be concealed at all costs. To allow the existence of such creatures to be known is to invite the spread of chaos, for the mere whisper of demons in the ears of the people will send them down the path of heresy, for knowledge of chaos will sow itself chaos. The survivors of such encounters are never left to rest. The Inquisition, ever watchful, comes swiftly to erase all traces of the event. Minds are wiped, memories scrubbed clean, and those who escape the storm are either quarantined, imprisoned in forced labor camps, or subjected to the ultimate sanction exterminatus, the utter annihilation of a world. Such knowledge, once spread, can never be unlearned, never retracted. The Inquisition ensures that no record of the horrors that transpired survives, and only the most forbidden texts sheltered in the deepest vaults, guarded by unrelenting zealots, known only by the most trusted of inquisitors, contain the true heresy of the demonic. Yet, even these records are incomplete, lost to time and destruction. What remains is known only to those who walk the razor's edge of damnation, heretics, Xenos, and the Inquisition itself. In the cold, dark corners of the galaxy, where reality itself is in constant flux, the shadow of the demon waits. Its hunger, a thirst for destruction, is never sated. The warp stirs, and the demon shall rise again.
Yeah. Cool. So that's a little bit about demonic incursions and kind of how they happen. Energies just kind of build up, and the dark gods take their whims out on real space. Another way they can go about doing this is creating solid warp rifts, which we'll talk about next. On rare and unholy occasions, the fabric of reality itself tears, allowing for the malefic and eldritch horrors of the Immaterium to bleed into the material universe. This breach, a warp rift, is a rupture in the very barrier between real space and the Imperium. This swirling, formless sea of psychic energy that is the dominion of the Chaos Gods and their thralls. Through this rift, the horrors of the warp are unleashed, spilling forth like venomous, writhing serpents from their dark den. A warp rift may appear with no forewarning, an accident of the ever-shifting tides of the Immaterium, or it may be a carefully wrought by the hands of mortals or malevolent deities themselves. Sometimes these rifts are brief, vanishing within mere moments as though they had never been, but others linger on, gaping holes in the fabric of reality that stretch across solar days, standard years, or even the fleeting span of Terran centuries. Some rifts appear as seething, howling whirlpools of raw psychic energy, their tumultuous power pulling at the very soul. Others offer glimpses into the abyssal heart of the realm of chaos, a vision that defies the senses and twists the mind. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy thought, like that you can see these rifts, these swirling energies. Like you could be on your planet and looking up into the night sky and just see this like purple cloud of energy just swirling about up there. And yeah, that's like that's like hell essentially.
I'm telling you, man, it explains UFOs. It's just the warp.
It's just warp.
Well, since the Is the Occult episode, We may as well mention that because as above so below, as below so above, you then get the Cadians looking up at the Great Rift, and now their eyes are purple.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. What a
want-
unique thing.
I wonder if there are people that went back with their Cadia army and repainted all their eyes purple after Cadia fell.
Only true Cadians would.
Yeah, only true Cadians would.
But the most nightmarish of rifts takes on forms that seem pulled from the very depths of hell itself. Gates of green fire, clouds of impenetrable shadow, lakes of boiling pus, and other grotesque and horrific sights that assault the mind with their sheer alien malevolence. To behold them is to feel one's sanity unravel, to be driven to madness by the sight of existence itself becoming unmade. It is often the followers of the ruinous powers, those that once walked the mortal path but now serve the dark gods, who seize these rifts as their staging grounds. Here they unleash unspeakable atrocities upon the galaxy, atrocities that echo the ancient twisted histories of their gods and their unfathomable evils they command. These rifts are not merely the gateways of the demonic, but are places of ancient horror, long dormant, are reignited, where titanic battles are fought and where the very cosmos trembles. But how do these rifts come to be? The causes may be many and varied, yet all are bound by the capricious and chaotic nature of the warp. Some rifts formed from the unpredictable fluctuations of the Immaterium itself, natural breaks in the cosmic fabric that allow the energies of the warp to spill forth. Others are the result of demonic possession, where a mortal corrupted and consumed by the raw powers of the warp become living conduit for the forces of chaos. Still, there are those rifts summoned by the dark rituals of the chaos cultists, their demon summoning rites tearing the veil between the worlds. There are darker causes still, rifts that are birthed from the psychic forces of unimaginable suffering and death, the slaughter of innocents in great wars, or the hideous aftershocks of the terrible atrocity can call forth the energies that rend the barrier between the realms, creating a breach that spills forth the tide of madness and destruction. Other rifts come into being through the catastrophic failure of the warp drive implosion, a tragic and volatile consequence of meddling with the forces beyond mortal comprehension. And there are rifts created through the unified will of the chaos gods themselves, when their collective desire coalesces and rends the fabric of reality to allow their dominion to expand. The most famous of these rifts are in the galaxy and known by those who have witnessed their horrors, each one a mark upon the universe's very soul. One of the greatest, the Great Rift, tore the galaxy asunder after the 13th Black Crusade, sundered by the will of the ruinous powers, but it is one example of the terrible cost when the forces of chaos are loosed upon the galaxy. And such rifts are often destined to remain a dark, malevolent feature of the galaxy's future, a future where the warp may one day consume all that we know. That's an interesting thought too about warp storms can stay for a long time, but they also can disappear just as quick as they came. And we've had like the Eye of Terror, we've had the Maelstrom, and we've had some big ones that have stayed around for thousands of years, but also they could just blink out of existence. Something could happen down the time frame of time and just mess it all up, and then it just blinks away as quickly and as suddenly as it was there.
So earlier we mentioned Exterminatus on a demon corrupted planet. When that happens, if there's a rift on a planet and the planet is no more, does the rift go away, or is there just now a rift left floating in the husk of a planet?
I was wondering that same question too.
Yeah, I think that second one. But with the energy, how many people did you kill on that virus bombing of the planet? Was that enough to keep the warp rift open for a Terran century or 50 years? Or what do we like? It's hard to put a number on that, but you could
are all
have
rifts,
that husk.
Are all rifts like the same size? Like, are they planet size, solar system size? Like, how big are we talking here?
Yeah, they vary in all shapes and sizes. And some are kind of like, think a top-down image of like a hurricane where you see the swirling cloud patterns. Some are very much like that. But then we also have the Cicatrix Maledictum, which think more of like a lightning bolt in its shape, where it was shot out from one point and ripped across the galaxy.
Like, and then it's like a literal opening, sort of.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
different exterminatus weapons will be used depending on their circumstance, and if it's a genuine warp rift of that size on a planet to be worth exterminatus, the Grey Knights can't close it, the Inquisition can't close it. Maybe a few Imperial households with rogue traders that have more than they should can't close it.
Yeah.
I imagine they just use cyclone torpedoes and just crack the planet. Maybe the intent and the act are enough, because that into itself could be seen as a warp rift closing ritual. Because I can't think of any examples in lore where it didn't work.
Yeah, it definitely is a good way to do it. It seems like, yeah, if you kill off everything feeding it, then, you know, chances are good it's going to go away eventually. It's going to close itself.
Or maybe the damage from whatever weapon you did is going to spread into the warp, so they close it to prevent it from getting inside.
Oh, damn, that literally is what warp shields are. Spilling the damage into the warp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I pulled up a picture on Google here of kind of the galaxy map in 40K. And you can see how it has many different shapes and sizes of the warp. Sometimes it's little splecks. Sometimes it goes across the whole galaxy.
Yeah, but those are massive.
Oh yes, yeah. They can be very big for sure.
And can they be like very small, like the size of a fist, or not really?
Yeah. No, like
Maybe
you know, there's a lot of examples of, like, you know, I'm playing Space Marine 2, and where a demon will just rip itself into real space, and it's just a warp rift the size of a demon. So
that's what I was thinking. Yeah, like just a little portal that spills a bunch of abominations into the Immaterium.
Yeah, and then just as quickly as it was formed, it disappears again. Where, yeah, these ones are definitely large and massive and have, you know, the backing of chaos gods pouring their power into them to keep them open and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mark, my memory fails me. Has the Dark Imperium been discussed at length yet?
On Warhammer? Or...
Yeah.
No, we haven't really done an episode on it. No.
Because there's an entire half of the Imperium that does not see the Astronomicon, that does not have support from the oldest parts of the Imperium, and it's there. And holy hell, it's screwed.
Yeah. It's not looking good.
Yeah, well, shall we get into some of those massive rifts? The Platinum Album rifts, the big ones, the bad boys. The Eye of Terror, that's obviously the most notorious one. A wound in the very fabric of reality, the Eye of Terror was birthed from the most tragic and catastrophic act in the history of the Eldari. A creation not born of design, but of desperate folly. It is here that the Chaos God's influence reached its zenith with the birth of Slaanesh, a birth that tore the world asunder. Bow within this ominous, unblinking eye reside the traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines, their foul worshippers, Chaos cultists, traitors, Immaterium, and the heretics, as well as the traitor Titan legions of the Dark Mechanicum. Within this malefic domain, the worshippers of the ruinous powers plot their dark rebellions, weaving their webs of corruption and unrelenting war. The Eye of Terror is not merely a rift, it is the heart of chaos itself, ever pulsing with the promise of destruction and damnation. So this is like, obviously, I think this plays a lot into the all of the lore of Warhammer, is this particular cosmic geographical location, the Eye of Terror, which I'm assuming is massive.
Yeah. So its history starts with the Eldar, and it's actually the birth of Slaanesh that caused this realm in space. And it spans whole star systems, man, like many. But then, like, I was looking real quick if the Eldar had like a name for it, since they're the one who caused it, and no, they just kind of ignore it. And then the Imperium kind of take over, because it just seems like Imperium have this special relationship with the gods. Even when the Eldar create this god, it's like they still would rather want humans around, and then humans go into there and colonize it, I guess.
I guess I got one question. The Eldar were hyper psychoactive, and at one point, I think, about as numerous as humans, but so much more psychically capable compared to. If the numbers of Eldar then are comparable to the Eldar, no. If the number of Eldar then are comparable to the number of human people now, but there's that massive psychic difference, do you think that there is the potential to make a fifth chaos god, Malal, or maybe something completely different? But is the potential there between population and individual psychic potential to give us another one?
Yeah, like the Eldar are trying to make their god of the undead Yanid, where it's like a literal god of death. When people Eldar die, they feed that god. So they are trying to do that, and they have like an avatar going, but it's not fully awakened yet. So there is actually like another chaos god happening right now. That would be a good example of it. But it kind of just seems like, while there's the same amount of humans, same amount of Eldar have a bigger psychic pull, there still just seems to be like this special X factor that happens with humans. Like, the calculation isn't just psychic might equals warp influence. There's another couple letters or numbers in that formula that we're missing, and the human is one of those missing equations.
Yep.
I found just the size of the Eye of Terror, and it's 20,000 light years across. So these can be massive, like incomprehensible in scale rifts.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely huge. And talking about massive and huge is the Great Rift, known in the tongues of the Imperium as the Cicatrix Maledictum. This colossal tear in reality stretches like a scar across the galaxy, severing the Imperium of man in twain. Once a sliver, a mere crack in the cosmos, it now rages as an uncontainable storm, an entire galaxy-wide warp rift, one of the most colossal and destructive the galaxy has ever known. It was born in the relentless and violent chaos that marked Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, a titanic force that shattered the boundaries between the material universe and the Immaterium. Those on the Terran side see it as an aberrant tear in the heavens, an unspeakable stain across the firmament. Yet, for those on the far side, those who dare traverse its accursed edge, it is something infinitely worse, the very gates of hell, a malevolent threshold between all that is sane and all that is unhinged. From the Eye of Terror, it tears across the cosmos, extending its unnatural influence from the desolate heart of the Hadex anomaly to the far reaches of the eastern fringe. The Maelstrom, a region of space both ancient and damned. The Maelstrom lies near the galactic core in the Ultima Segmentum, a vast warp rift that spins in eternal torment. Unlike the Eye of Terror, which was wrought through the birth of a chaos god, the Maelstrom is a naturally occurring abomination. A wound in the cosmos itself, an eternal testament to the twisted energies that exist beyond the veil of the material realm. The area surrounding it, the so-called Maelstrom Zone, is a place of endless storm and warp-shattered hell, where stellar travel is all but impossible, and where the laws of physics bend and break with every passing moment. Only the foolhardy and the desperate dare to venture here. The storms that tear through this cursed region are as deadly as they are unpredictable. The Hadex Anomaly. A monstrous heart of pure malice, the Hadex Anomaly pulses with the corrupting and overwhelming forces of the warp. located at the core of the Jericho Reach in the eastern fringe. The celestial wound bathes countless worlds in a sickly crimson glow. It is no mere phenomenon. It is a malignancy in the very fabric of space-time, consuming and regurgitating entire star systems with a cruel and rhythmic hunger. The worlds drawn too close to its corrupting influence become suffused with its dark essence, while the stars themselves wither beneath its malignant radiance, transforming into bloated carmine orbs. It is not just a warp rift, but a cancer upon time itself, warping reality and the flow of history. Time itself becomes twisted, fragmented, and shattered in its presence, with entire timelines being rewritten and redefined by the will of the Immaterium. Those who venture too close are never the same, if they are fortunate enough to return at all. So I kind of see it almost. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but this sort of time anomaly and even the ability to rewrite timelines, is this sort of like 40K's version of a multiverse where you can, if you wanted to write a new story, you could just use the time manipulation of a rift somewhere and kind of rewrite history a little bit?
I was thinking more like, because I saw a meme about it today, this is going to be how if 40K gets to the end times, instead of doing an end times, there's going to be something where Gilliman and all the Primarchs are fighting, and they're all going to go through that rift by accident and then get dumped back out at a different point in the timeline. And then 40K continues, but it's M39 now instead of being M41, wherever we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking too.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a fucking smart man, but like I said, I was listening to this podcast about black holes and shit. And they're saying one potential is on the inside of that black hole is just like another universe. And like a lot of these concepts kind of just carry over where, yeah, okay, you go into this warp rift and you enter another universe where, you know, time's slightly different, it's altered, it's very similar, but yeah, it could be many of these things. And that's the crazy thing about black holes, but more on topic, the crazy thing about the warp, all things are possible, man. It might be one of those ways for the multiverse to kind of be accessible, to jump one verse over and over, and you kind of jump between these places. But I don't think GW intentionally tried to like give you that option to rewrite timelines and stuff. But hey, man, it's definitely a possibility.
So
yeah, I mean, it is kind of. Some people accuse multiple timelines or universes in any fictional universe as being lazy because it is kind of overdone, but you can kind of see the potential for that there.
Well, you know, we're coming even to this understanding in like real life that might be actually the truth. There might actually be universes universe over, you know? So, you know, for it to be in so common, it's not that big a deal. It's like, well, why is gravity so common? Well, it's because it's the way that it is. It's just the constant, man. So
yeah,
there's some fighting of Marvel Avengers defending.
Yeah.
All right. The next, what do we call this section? Warp riffs, great riffs, well-known riffs. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
warp
where we're
riffs.
at. The next well-known rift we're going to is the Screaming Vortex. Ooh, it's got one of my favorite words in it. A cacophony of agonized, seething energies. The Screaming Vortex is one of the great warp storms, a vast rolling cauldron of malevolent forces that separates the Calyx sector from the Koranos expanse. It is a wound in the very fabric of reality, a tear so violent that it distorts the laws of nature itself. For those who dare approach, it is a vortex of despair and madness, a maelstrom where the veil between the real space and the Immaterium has been viciously torn asunder. Screams of the lost, the damned, and the forgotten echo from its depths, a terrible chorus that drives those who hear it to the brink of insanity. It is not a place of safety, nor one for the faint of heart. The screaming vortex is a maelstrom of destruction, devouring all who enter too close and leaving only the void in its wake. Feels like a very Chaos
That's
Emperor's
so funny.
Children place to be.
Yeah, just the screaming. Flying past in space and you hear the screaming.
Well, it
And
makes
there's
you
no
wonder.
sound in space, so that's extra freaky if you can hear that.
Well, it makes you wonder if by cosmic anomalies, like just the weird, like a black hole, for example, or maybe some vortex, or maybe some stellar phenomena, if there's places where any chaos worshippers would go to bathe in the sensation of their god.
Oh, that's kind of a cool thought. Yeah, like you could go to this one specific planet on the outside of the screaming vortex and hear the choir singing, screaming at you without getting devoured. Little pilgrimage place.
Like it's not chaos, but it's a physical anomaly that chaos would find sustenance. Chaos would find sustenance from.
It's still chaos, though, because the warp itself is chaos. And this is a warp rift.
No, I mean physical stellar phenomena.
Oh, you're not talking about this rift specifically. You're talking about something. Okay, that makes more sense now.
Like you turn up to maybe the rings of Saturn, by equivalent example, and the Zinch worshipper is just tripping off it because it looks so pretty.
Zinch on
Sure.
LSD looking at the rings of Saturn. Oh, that'd be funny. All right. Finally, a loyalist rift. The storm of the Emperor's wrath. Born from the betrayal of the reign of blood in the 36th millennium, the storm of the Emperor's wrath is a furious and unyielding warp storm that has raged since the age of I'm going to say this wrong. Apostasy, where the renegade High Lord of Terra, George Vandire, sought to seize the Imperium in the name of false power. The Ecclesiarchy, in its eternal zealotry, believes that this storm is a divine punishment, a wrathful act of the Emperor's will for the heresy and bloodshed wrought by Vandire's treachery. Now it tears across the Kara Dryad, that sounds right, sector, a relentless fury of divine and infernal power, a sign that even the gods themselves are not immune to the reach of the Emperor's vengeance. So yes, the Emperor is the fifth chaos god, Jordan, since you were asking if there were more of them.
How dare you? How dare you?
All right.
The next episode I have written up is about the Tau god, Tau-Va, the six-armed empress, I think they call her, or something like that.
You said the sixth god, which means there is a fifth one, which means the Emperor is the fifth god.
You just proved
No,
his point, Mark.
Malice,
Yep,
come on,
yep.
Malal.
Nope,
No, you
nope.
son-
I'm punishing you.
I
I'm
prefer
punishing you.
Malal.
You misspoke. I took
Okay.
advantage of it.
Fine.
All right. If this name is in here more than once, I'm gonna say Van Gogh, and I'm apologizing ahead of time. Van Groth's rapidity, a purple glowing whirlpool that pulses and churns in the eastern fringe of the imperial domain. Van Groth's rapidity is a place of paradox and peril. It is a warp phenomenon, a destructive force that extends across light years of space, rendering apart any unfortunate to pass through it without careful preparation. Yet, despite the peril it presents, it is a phenomenon of great utility. For the Adeptus Mechanicus and rogue traders, it serves as a warp shortcut, enabling them to traverse vast stretches of space with unnatural speed. If they can survive the journey, known as Hell's Slingshot, it has allowed ships to cut their travel times down to mere months, cut their time down months and years. However, To travel the rapidity is to tempt fate, for the consequences are dire. In the 41st millennium, the once prosperous world of Medusa 5 was utterly obliterated in a warp storm, a violent byproduct of the rapidity itself, a reminder that of the fickle and destructive power of the Immaterium. Each of these warp phenomena represents a breach, a rift in the very essence of the material universe, where the forces of the Empyrean are free to spill forth, twisting reality itself and corrupting all it touches. They are not simply anomalies, they are living wounds in the fabric of the cosmos, remorseless and unrelenting in their power to reshape all that is. In the 40K universe, they are markers of damnation, places where time and space and life itself are but fleeting illusions before the absolute power of the warp.
Cool. These are such like awesome storytelling devices that you can use. All of a sudden, you can, you have your solar system that you're writing about, and what happens when it gets cut off by the warp storm, or what happens when you have a warp storm that leads to another warp storm, and now is like this wormhole type thing that can lead you across the galaxy, like the rapidity one or whatever. Yeah, they can become such interesting ways to try to enhance your little setting or whatever.
Yeah, they're definitely cool. And they give so, like you said, there's so many thematic things they can do with it, but they could use it to do a soft reboot if they really had to. They can use it to, like the Dark Imperium, isolate an entire section over here and have a bunch of stories right in this section of space that have nothing to do with the greater setting, but you can do whatever you want in this space because it doesn't matter relative to everything else. It's cut off. It's just such a helpful tool for them.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Kessel Run from hell. The idea that there's this slingshot that you can take months to years just removed from your journey and your warp travel, but the demons might eat you, and if they do it, they might do it in a way that just starts with nibbling the toes. I mean, it's neat as
No.
hell.
What?
It's like if you go
Yeah.
and you tempt fate by taking this run because it's exceptionally perilous, you're in for it special. But how bad does the warp voyage have to be if that one in particular is screwed? So that's the flavor of warp torture I nominate for that run.
That's interesting.
Nice. Yeah.
I was thinking when I was reading it, because Court always likes to say double nerd. I'm going to double nerd and triple nerd. I was thinking in the Kessel Run, and I was thinking in Star Trek when they flew around the sun to go back in time and then flew around the sun again to come back to modern time. That's what I was thinking when they're talking about going through this rift thing.
That is not how that works, but I love it.
Shh. Superman flew around the Earth. For nerds, Superman flew around the Earth and made it go backwards, which reverses time.
Okay, we're 5 nerds in. With Stargate SG-1, you just had your not warp tunnel. You had your wormhole go through a solar flare to travel through time. There you go. 5 nerds, 5 nerds.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a
don't
lot
get
of
me
nerds.
started on Stargate. Not even go there.
Yeah, so that's a pretty good understanding of warp rifts, kind of how they form, what they can kind of be used for. So that's kind of the Immaterium bleeding onto the Materium, and now let's talk about the flip side of that, where the Immaterium has some Materium bleeding into it, and we're going to talk about demon worlds.
Those accursed spheres, where the fabric of reality itself unravels. Demon worlds are the ultimate manifestation of chaos's will, trapped in the deepest, most esoteric rifts of the warp. These worlds are ensnared in a twisted symbiosis between the impossible energies of the Immaterium and the physical universe. Bound not by the laws of physics, but the capricious whims of demon rulers in the deepest recesses of their mortal subjects' collective consciousness. Demon worlds exist as nightmares made flesh, ever shifting and ever transforming in a reality that defies all comprehension. Dominating each such world is a demon prince, an entity of unparalleled malice and power, capable of bending the very nature of the world to their desires. The essence of the warp flows through them, a tide of psychic potential that warps and mutates the environment, turning forests into shrieking masses of thorn flesh, oceans into vast pits of acid or blood, and skies into chaotic, storm-racked chasms of madness. Each demon world is thus a strange, ever-evolving sub-reality, a realm where time, space, and matter are nothing but playthings to the malevolent demonic will. Most of these nightmarish domains are found within the vast rift known as the Eye of Terror, a wound in the fabric of reality itself, from which the forces of chaos spew forth into the galaxy.
Yeah, it's cool how these places in the Materium or Immaterium, they have to be mastered still. They still have to be controlled. If they don't have like a demon prince kind of holding this little pocket, this little realm together, it will collapse. Just like on the flip side, when we have warp rifts, there has to be some type of energy being poured into the warp rift on the Materium side. This has it, that flip, that inverse. So
Zinch, that sounds so Zinch. I'd say that in a nutshell is the difference between Zinch and Slanesh.
ah,
Yet, there are those few worlds that persist beyond the boundaries of this rift, within the reach of the Imperium itself. To the Inquisition, these worlds are a blasphemous. To the Inquisition, these worlds are a blasphemous aberration. They move swiftly to contain or exterminate any signs of chaos creeping into the. To the Inquisition, these worlds are a blasphemous aberration, moving swiftly to contain or exterminate any signs of chaos creeping into Imperial space from such tainted worlds or ones about to become. However, the nature of these realms defies even the might of the Imperium, for the very fabric of reality around them is warped, making attempts of total eradication near impossible. The Inquisition knows that if a world is not purged swiftly, it could become yet another demon world, an eternal stain upon the Imperium that cannot be erased. The four major chaos gods Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh perpetually vie for control over these cursed domains. The armies of demons and mortal followers engage in interminable wars, blood-soaked and soul-rending, to claim these worlds for their patron. These battles may span centuries, the very land itself becoming a vast, ruined area where the forces of chaos clash in a violent frenzy, their struggles echoing through the warp. Though the gods themselves do not take part in these wars, their will is enacted through their generals, greater demons and demon princes, former mortals who understand the dual nature of existence, straddling the material and greater demons and demon princes, former mortals who understand the dual nature of existence, straddling both the material and immaterium, and in rare cases, true demonstrations of creativity where the gods themselves cast their shadow. Some of the galaxy's most powerful psychers have glimpsed these worlds in their visions, glimpses of the demonic horror that lie hidden within the Eye of Terror. They speak of Meldengard, where a black sun hangs in a sky as white as death, casting its unholy light upon a city of twisted metal and broken souls, ruled by the demon Primarch Perturabo of the Iron Warriors. Others speak of Bubonicus, a world soaked in blood where floating spheres of fire drift on the air, their light casting an unnatural glow across a landscape marked by plague and decay. These disturbing visions are not mere dreams, they are omens of the malevolent power that stirs within the deepest recesses of the Immaterium, a power that threatens to spill over into the galaxy at any moment. When a demon prince claims such a world as their own, their victory is celebrated by their divine patron who bestows the world upon them as a twisted gift. In their hands, the world is reshaped, distorted into a reflection of the demon prince's desires. Each demon world is thus unique in its horror, for no two are alike. Each is a product of its ruler's nightmares, tainted dreams, its bleakest and most perverse fantasies brought to life. From the darkest labyrinths of the warp to the charred remains of once proud planets' demon worlds are monuments to the power of chaos, each one more terrifying than the last. In these worlds where reality itself is a fleeting vision, the demon forces rule supreme, and their influence stretches beyond the material plane. The air is thick with the stench of corruption. The sky is churned with the echoes of forgotten horrors, and every soul trapped within is bound to the will of their demonic overlords. The very essence of time and space collapse within these places, leaving only endless torment and maddening revelation. Here in the void between universes, the true power of chaos reveals itself in its purest, most terrifying form.
Cool. If I was a demon prince, my demon world would be called Plastico. And it's just full of Warhammer sprues. And the nerds, they all want to go there, right? And then they build their armies. But then here's what happens. The army rebels and the plastic comes alive and kills their maker, creating a vicious cycle of creation and death.
Sounds
Plastico.
excessive.
Yeah, it is.
You're a greater demon. Are you Primarch or a greater demon as Slanesh?
I am the Primarch, but I'm not a Primarch, unfortunately. So yeah, just greater demon of Slanesh. So let's get on to life on a demon world. Inquisitorial expeditions to demon worlds are few, and those that occur are born out of desperate necessity. The price of surviving such a journey is steep, and the tales of those who have ventured to such cursed realms are rare, elusive whispers among the darkest corners of the galaxy. The cost of survival on these worlds is often nothing short of a piece of one's very soul, and for those who remain, the horrors they endure are unlike anything in the material universe. The most common accounts speak of being haunted relentlessly by the very demons that inhabit the world, or plastic in Plastico's case. The terrain that shifts and morphs like nightmares they represent. The laws of nature lose all meaning, and reality warps into an ever-changing landscape of terror. The dead speak, the rocks weep, and the very air itself seems to suffocate with madness. Some mortals are even said to awaken each morning only to find their bodies in need of reassembly, a grotesque cycle of regeneration. Every corner of these worlds is steeped in impossibility, twisted madness, each step forward drawing the traveler deeper into their own personal hell. Ancient sages of forbidden lore have speculated on the nature of these demon-infested realms. Some whisper that the mortals trapped within them wield some measure of control of the world's very essence, their fears and emotions shaping the reality they inhabit. Others suggest that the demons themselves feed off this emotional energy, using it to sustain their world's existence, to ensure that the eternal horrors never cease. The truth remains a matter of debate among the greatest demonologists of the Ordo Malleus, but it is clear that only the most formidable humans can endure the relentless barrage of horrors these worlds bestow. Those few who have survived and lived to tell the tales often remark that they are truly fortunate as those who perished early, spared from endless suffering. Not all demon worlds, however, are the same. Some are dedicated wholly to a single god, their dominions ruled by a demon prince who bends their world to their will. But far more often, those worlds become cauldrons of endless warfare, where no single faction reigns supreme. Instead, they are battlegrounds where the forces of chaos wage an unholy war against one another. And any mortals unfortunate enough to be trapped within are nothing more than pawns in the demonic conflict. Stability is a rare commodity in such places, and where it is found, it's fiercely contested by the other denizens of the warp. Yeah, these planets in this picture is kind of crazy, you know, chaos gods fighting over ever-shifting landscapes and stuff, and you're just some mere mortal on this planet, and you get killed day after day, and every day you wake up and you're still on this planet, even though you died gruesome death yesterday, you awake as if nothing happens, and you're still trapped in this relentless cycle of the gods battling over your soul.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, this description. There's a book called The Black Farm. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but basically the premise of that story is it's not purgatory, but there's a space between heaven and hell that's owned by a different entity that God created. And everyone who attempts to unalive themselves goes to this place, and they have the option to stay there forever. And it sounds just like one of these things, or they can try to feed the deity that's there their bodies, and they'll either get crushed and cease to exist, or they'll get spat back out into the real world.
I'm
Kind of
getting
like
dark.
You're getting
Sorry.
what? No, go ahead.
I'm getting Dark Knight of the Soul vibes from that.
Dark Knight of the Soul. I haven't heard of Dark Knight of the Soul before.
Are you familiar with tarot cards?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't
Vaguely.
dabble with them, but I'm aware of them.
The Hermit specifically.
Okay.
The Hermit's
Oh.
Journey.
I'm gonna take your word for it. I know nothing about tarot cards other than I don't mess with them.
From a basic sense, it's just the general idea that there's archetypical ideas that are just printed onto the better cards, the better decks, and that's their representation. I mean, without ever using them, you can just look at the card art and get something from it, because each card art is meant to represent major and minor archetypes, which is why they're often divided into major and minor arcana, major and minor archetypes from a very surface level sense. There's a few that symbolize, but are symbolic of the idea that there are moments of suffering so complete that you might see it as divine, as feature complete, if you must, maybe even as perfect, but it's indelible in the end. I get the sense that it's that, because I think if you've lived long enough, you have a moment where you really are genuinely in a personal way tested, and how you associate that test, although it might come down to your personal beliefs, it's a personal test that only you yourself will ever appreciate, but other people have been tested in their own very personal way. It feels like that.
Okay.
Kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't tie really into that story, but interesting tangent.
Sorry, I got tangents on tap.
When a world when a world is classified as a demon world, it is marked as being either already present within real space or having once been a part of it. These rare moments draw the attention of Imperial agencies, including the Adeptus Astartes, who are tasked with reconnaissance missions into such blasphemous locales. Though the journey is fraught with danger, sometimes the Inquisition uncovers lost relics or uncovers valuable new insights, along with the occasional survivor who retains their sanity and soul, albeit at a great cost. The few individuals who manage to survive these accursed worlds provide the Inquisition with invaluable, albeit maddening information. These survivors, though often broken in mind and spirit, possess knowledge that no other source can offer. Once rescued, they are sequestered to prevent the spread of the taint of chaos, for their proximity to these realms have left their mark upon them. Their skills, however, are too valuable to remain locked away, and they often bear with them the experiences and abilities that made them exceptional in the eyes of the Inquisition. Many of these survivors exhibit an unusual connection to the warp, far beyond that of the common human. While not psychers in a conventional sense, their exposure to the Immaterium has left them with heightened sensitivity to disturbances in the fabric of reality. They can sense when demonic entities are near and when psychic phenomena stir in the air. Some describe them as an infusion of color and brilliance in the world, otherwise shrouded in shades of gray and vibrant, shimmering awareness of the unseen. These individuals, however, carry with them the scars of torment. Night terrors, compulsions, and pervasive paranoia are commonplace among them. Their wills are forged into unyielding furnace of resistance, their minds tempered by the endless torment they endure. A cold, bitter sense of humor often accompanies them, an iconic shield against the horrors they have witnessed. The Inquisitors who make use of them know full well the danger they present, The threat of chaos corruption is ever present, and a careful watch is maintained over them, for even the slightest slip can turn these once valuable assets into dangerous weapons of the warp. Yeah, that's super cool how these humans, if you grow up on a demon world and somehow you escape it, you can still kind of see the influences of warp as they creep into the Immaterium. And it just might be like, oh man, I'm seeing a lot of colors like happening from this building over here. Something bad, something demonic, something warp influence must be happening in it. And they're somehow able to kind of see it without being psychers themselves necessarily.
Yeah. So, shall we go into the nightmarish realms? Demon worlds were once living, breathing planets, governed by the steady laws of nature and the cold, indifferent mechanics of reality. But through some cataclysmic rupture, they have been irrevocably claimed by the warp, twisting into islands of the Immaterium, floating in the boundless sea of real space. These cursed realms no longer obey the laws of physics or reason. They are the playgrounds of the ruinous powers, where the very fabric of existence is warped and shattered. Here, demons roam freely between worlds, unhindered by the boundaries that once separated them from the material universe. The four great powers of chaos, ancient cosmic forces of corruption and discord, ceaselessly battle for control over these twisted worlds. Their armies, a grotesque fusion of demon kind and mortal thralls, wage unending wars to claim dominion over these tainted realms. These bloody and eternal struggles, fought across vast stretches of time, often last for centuries, each battle an unceasing echo of the great game, an eternal conflict played out in the horrific theater of the warp. It is a battle where the deeds and desires of the Chaos Legions reflect the wills of their dark masters, shaping the very reality of the demon worlds they inhabit. At the helm of these armies stand the greater demons and the demon princes, once mortals who ascended to unholy power. Demon princes, in particular, are the most fearsome of these leaders, for they possess a knowledge of both the material universe and the Immaterium, understanding the fragile balance between both realms. Their ascendancy is marked by their conquest of a demon world, a victory that grants them the right to warp and twist the very fabric and the world in their own image, remaking it into a reflection of their dark desires. These worlds, then, are as diverse and terrifying as their rulers. Some take forms of horrifying beauty, such as oceans of bubbling, roiling flesh, while others take shapes so nightmarish that even from millions of kilometers away, their twisted contours, the grinning skulls, or vast, riven chasms are visible to all. Once a demon prince claims a demon world, it becomes an extension of their will, a distortion mirror for their madness. The world itself is shaped by their immense power, reshaped in ways that defy all comprehension. Mountains that float weightlessly in the air, volcanoes that spew rivers of backward flowing lava, and landscapes that defy the very principles of reality. In these places, the laws of nature cease to exist, replaced instead by the whims and desires of the chaos gods. The demon worlds are not merely realms of war, they are also breeding grounds for worship and sacrifice. The mortal inhabitants of these cursed planets serve chaos in two equally essential yet equally damning ways. They are the flesh and blood of the Chaos Legions, the lifeblood of the armies that surge forth from the realms into the material universe. Yet they also offer their souls to the chaos gods, swelling the presence of the ruinous power in the warp, feeding their unquenchable thirst for power and domination. The Eye of Terror and now the Great Rift are perpetually ablaze with the fires of war. Yet not every mortal soul on these worlds is drawn into battle. Only those brave or desperate enough to escape the slave pits, the prayer gangs, and the unholy manufactoria may rise to fight in the name of chaos, their bodies and minds twisted into instruments of the ruinous powers. Those who remain serve the dark gods through labor and worship, their lives nothing more than endless offerings to the forces that rule over them. Among these wretched souls are those that serve with a fervor that borders on madness. Slaves in the service of chaos often grow to love their torment, become frenzied with pleasure as they sacrifice themselves in even more grotesque ways. This is just incredible. Okay.
I like the prayer gangs
Yeah.
that they mentioned. Hey, get back here! We're gonna pray for you.
Yeah, but just to like love to sacrifice yourself and make your repeated sacrifice more and more painful every time is like a pretty like psychotic like torture to think up of in your own brain, you know. But hey, good job, GW. Good job. Their devotion becomes a perverse competition as they strive to outdo one another in their attempts to gain favor with their demonic masters. They are not simply laborers in the demonic foundries. They are the beating heart of the planet-sized prayer hordes that writhe in endless devotion. Countless millions, driven mad by their ceaseless prayers, form vast churning masses that pour their souls into the warp, each prayer amplifying the power of the ruinous powers. Through their suffering and devotion, the chaos gods grow even more potent, feeding off the ceaseless sacrifice of those who live and die in the name of their dark, insatiable hunger. Thus, the demon worlds endure a nightmarish reflection of the will of the chaos gods, ever shifting, ever violent, ever hungry. In these realms, where the very nature of existence is contorted beyond recognition, the eternal war of chaos plays out in all its terrifying glory.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's a nice vision of hell, if I ever read one.
Multiple visions of hell
Perfect
because there's
place to
multiple
vacation.
planets. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's crazy. All right. So there are some well-known demon worlds. Sortarias, known as the planet of sorcerers, Sortarias exists in the heart of the Eye of Terror, a place of darkness, torment, and forbidden knowledge. The demon world is the domain of Magnus the Red, the demon prince once known as the Primarch of the Thousand Suns. After the fall of Prospero and the cataclysmic destruction of Tizca, the city of light, Magnus wove his sorcery to drag the very heart of his shattered city through the warp, binding it to this nightmarish realm. Excuse me. What was once a beacon of knowledge now festers as a place of desolation. Rocky plains seethe with volcanic fury, and the skies are forever lit by the terrible storms of warp energy. Jagged tower rise from the ashen wastes, grotesque echoes of Tizca's former grandeur, all crowned by Magnus's obsidian spire. The tower of the Cyclops. This infernal monolith looms above the world, the great eye of the tower forever gazing into the warp, its malevolent gaze searching for powerful psychers and arcane artifacts to further the ambitions of its master. Over the millennia, the Thousand Suns have scoured the Imperium, enslaving and bringing under their domain a myriad of souls to serve them. Among these thralls, many have escaped into the inhospitable wilds, forming nomadic warbands led by chaos champions, some born of the Thousand Suns ranks, others from the lowliest of slaves. From these warbands rise the champions who will one day serve the Thousand Suns once more. Beastmen and their bloated forms twisted by Nurgle's foul blessings roam the desolate landscape, mutants born of human flesh, now enslaved to a warrior caste, only loyal to their masters. Sortarius stands as a place of relentless torment, a land where knowledge and power are clawed from the bones of the universe, and where the very fabric of reality bends to the will of Magnus the Red. That's kind of cool that we were talking about the intersections earlier and how that this is clearly a very Tzeentch-owned planet, but there's still demons of Nurgle roaming the wastelands. they're mutants. That's cool.
Yeah, like even in these realms, like the you know, the emotions that feed one god will feed the other one, so they will still have some amount of power, influence in realms that aren't necessarily their home realm.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm not big on Thousand Sons lore, so that's really cool to learn all that. The next planet we're going to is Sicarius. Beneath the blood-soaked sky of fire and ruin lies Sicarius, a planet shrouded in an eternal and blasphemous worship. This demon world is ruled by Lorgar, boo, the demon prince and former primarch of the Word Bearers Legion. Here, vast and
Yeah, piss off some fanboys. I know a couple on the Discord that will just really rile them up.
Good.
Looking forward to the salt.
Yeah. Right. Here, vast and oppressive cathedrals rise from the rotting earth, each one more grotesque than the last, monuments to the chaos undivided, built by endless toil of millions of slaves. The air is thick with the scent of incense and decay. As spider-legged cranes toil ceaselessly, raising more and more towering spires atop the crumbling ruins of those before, beneath the surface an infernal labyrinth sprawls, a warren of subterranean structures devoted to the dark gods, twisting and contorting like the very soul of the world itself. At the heart of this corrupted world lies the Basilica of the Word, an immense cathedral fortress crowned by 5 kilometer high spires. By 5 kilometer high spires, each a monument to suffering, on which countless living sacrifices writhe with eternal agony. Here, Loser himself remains sequestered in the Templum Infernico, a place so sacred that even his own legion has never set foot in it since their arrival in the Eye of Terror. The fallen dark apostles of the Word Bearers lie entombed in the soil of Sicarius, their bodies serving as further offerings to the unyielding demands of their dark gods. This is a world where devotion is a ceaseless and ever-growing hunger, where the screams of the faithful echo in the dark halls, and where Lorgar's will is absolute, ever-watchful, and eternal. And I cannot wait for Korax to find it and show him what's up.
Yeah. I love the picture of this planet of them just building up spires of worship on top of the crumbling ruins of old spires, and they're just taking the remains of the wreckage, building a new spire that collapsed, and they build another spire on that one which collapses, and it's just this never-ending cycle.
Yeah, and because Warhammer does have a lot of religious imagery in it, and it just makes me think of the Bible verse: if you build your house on the sand or you build your house on the rock. Lorgar caused a bunch of problems, but now his entire planet is just constantly built on ruins and ruins. There is no firm foundation whatsoever there. It's just rubble and dust, and it falls all the time. I think that's a really cool juxtaposition.
Yeah, for sure. Spider cranes climbing around, building buildings. Fucking cool.
Yeah, that was when I read that, it took me a minute because my brain was like spider and crane, and I'm like, what does that mean? What is that? Is it like short legs walking across things with really tall tower, or is it really tall legs like daddy long leg crane crawling around with just the thing coming off of it? You know what I mean?
Oh yes, I like it. I like both actually, for sure. Both exist.
I think. Go ahead.
Lorgar wanted truth. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Lorgar wanted truth from everyone but himself, and I guess in a way he found it.
Yeah, he's the loser Primarch, and I'll fight anyone on that. He's the worst Primarch. Change my mind.
Okay, now I want to do it for fun.
Actually, I'll change your mind. I think the worst is Conrad Cruz, for sure.
Oh, he's number 2. It's a really close second for me, and I can see chat's probably already getting mad. There's a lot of people. Yep, there it is. But
can you imagine being the Emperor's Law and failing that thoroughly?
Cringe. He's the Primarch of cringe, not Chaos Undivided. We'll say that now. Every time I see his name, we need a bot for the Discord that every time someone says Lorgar, it just says Primarch of Cringe right after that as a comment.
I'm on it. I'll find that bot.
I love that. All right. The Plague Planet. It's a great planet. Best planet in the world. Be there all the time. Nurgle, great guy. Love Nurgle.
All the people want to touch and come to my planet.
Yeah, it's a planet of rebirth. I don't know why people saying they decay here. It's not true. Nurgle himself, he assured me it's a great planet. It's awesome.
Fake news.
There's no greenhouse gases. All
There's no
clear.
greenhouse gases.
It's the cleanest air.
Oh. All right. The Plague Planet is a realm of decay and disease, a world where agony is the eternal companion of its inhabitants. The demon world is the home of Mortarion, the demon prince and former primarch of the Death Guard, who rules this festering orb with a grip of iron. Here, disease is not merely a curse, it is a way of life. The very air is thick with the miasma of corruption, and the inhabitants, twisted and bloated by their constant exposure to Nurgle's blessings, beg for respite that can never come. Some are even elevated to become chaos champions of Nurgle, their swollen bodies a badge of divine flavor, while others vie for the chance to ascend to demonhood in a very perverse mockery of life's fleeting cycle. Beastmen, deformed and diseased, roam the land in a fervid frenzy, each one more grotesque than the last, the bloating of the many afflictions as marks of their divine grace. Mortarion has shaped his world to resemble his long-lost home, Barbarous. Its inhabitants live in fear, huddled in festering villages beneath the looming, pestiled citadels where the true masters reside. And what did Jack say about Lorgar? Lorgar is a little bit, everyone knows it. Ask anyone to Trump.
Lorgar is a little bitch. Everyone knows it. Ask anyone. I've said it time and time again.
Thank you, Jax. You're now my favorite chatter.
Yeah.
When he wrote a book, it's very small. It's the smallest book. It's the smallest book with the smallest pen. The smallest pen. He needed a milk crate to stand on. It's not even a soapbox. It's not even a real box. It's not even a real crate. And he doesn't even have a real pen. He's a little pen man.
We're gonna have to make a whole new section of the podcast just imitating Trump and making fun of Lorgar.
I'm there.
Yeah, no. Trump explains 40K. That'd be a good podcast.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. Jack says pain. Jax is wrong. That's funny. All right. From his high throne, Mortarion watches over his decaying domain, a skeptical figure as black as the planet itself. Skeletal figure as black as the planet itself, eternally casting his baleful gaze over the world he has shaped in his image. The Plague Planet stands at the very embodiment of Nurgle's power, a place where decay reigns and death is but a fleeting respite from the eternal agony that awaits all who dwell here.
Nice,
cool.
nice. We'll add that to the list of places we're going to have to choose from to go to at the end of this episode. And each of us will be going to a place, and your Patreon dollars can fund that. So choose wisely.
The Death Guard was my first Chaos faction because I said a long time ago I would never play it. And then I got them in one of the starter boxes, and I'm like, okay, these guys are cool. So
well, since we're here.
Yeah, while we're here, I guess I have to, you know what I mean?
Cool.
You want to take this next one, Nemo?
Damn it, hardware mute. Where were we? Sorry.
Medringard.
Medringard. I'm glad you said that because I was not going to say it right.
Medringard. Indeed.
I don't know if I said it right either, but that's what it is now.
Hey, I'm going with your pronunciation.
Fun thing about the warp is it changes every time you say it. Technically.
Exactly.
You could 100% while we're reading the script, you could totally change things. And I'm so dyslexic, I would never notice and just be like, oh my God, I've been pronouncing that wrong this whole time. And you're just gaslighting me throughout the whole podcast.
I'll do it on the next episode. Yeah.
You're saying you're the original Mandela effect.
True.
Medringard is a world of nightmare, a fortress planet forged in the deepest pits of anguish and torment. This demon world is ruled by Perturabo, one of the weakest Primarchs, the Demon Prince and former Primarch of the Iron Warriors, and it stands as a testament to his obsession with siege and despair, and definitely not iron within or without. The very landscape is an endless expanse of towering fortresses and labyrinthine dungeons, stretching high into the heavens, each one a monument to the harsh, unforgiving reign of the Iron Warriors. The skies are perpetually shrouded in a smoky pall, cast beneath the black sun that stains the heavens. Here, there are no native inhabitants, only the unfleshed, a band of cannibalistic mutants who skulk through the hills and gorges, twisted by the mockeries of humanity. One second, I need to mute for a moment.
The unfleshed. I love that. Just these like you just see rippling muscles running around eating each other. Just cannibal muscle mutants.
Not a lot of things make me uncomfortable, but the unflushed does for some reason. It gives me the ick. I don't like it.
Isn't an ick comparable to cleaned great and clean ones?
The great unclean ones are the ick.
Yeah.
But what if you cleaned your great unclean ones?
You'd have that really weird model that looks like a fat baby. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but somebody did clean a great unclean one model. They filled in the gaps with green stuff, and it just looks like a fat baby on a fat, ugly baby on a stand. It is so weird.
Don't like that.
Only the unfleshed. Only the unfleshed. A band of cannibalistic mutants who skulk through the hills and gorges, twisted mockeries of humanity. Great unclean ones. The world is a bleak and oppressive place, a prison of iron and stone where slaves toil to death under the watchful eyes of the Iron Warriors. The Demon Prince himself resides in the highest tower, surrounded by his legions, ever watchful for new prey to serve his insatiable hunger for war. Medringard is a place where despair is eternal. Victory is always beyond reach. A world that has become a prison for all who dare to enter. Yet, still, there is the Crucible. Deep within the lower vortex of the Screaming Vortex lies a hellish realm known as Crucible. A demon world where the very air is thick with the tortured wails of the damned. This is a place of agony beyond imagination, born of the anguished cries of the Eldari as their civilization was destroyed during the fall. Crucible is a world of eternal suffering, a realm where pain takes on an almost tangible form, where the souls of the damned are trapped in an endless cycle of torment. The nature of the suffering suffers between the whims of the dark gods. Where Khorne holds sway, it is a savage battlefield, where violence and bloodshed reign. When Slaanesh ascends, the suffering becomes tender, twisted into acts of love and longing under the influence of Nurgle. The pain is an endless cycle of decay and rebirth, where Zenith... Wow, I pronounced that one badly.
Zenith, yeah, I've heard that pronounced a lot of different ways. Never that way.
Oh yeah, the zenith of Zinch. Yeah, I might be showing my colors. Damn.
I called it to Zinch. Two people's faces, and I went 2 years saying that, and no one corrected me.
Tzatziki sauce.
Yeah, I was like, oh, Tzazinch, and it said it at hobby stores too. They said nothing to me, and then one guy got like super angry because he's forgot their legion already. The scarab one, Thousand Sons. Yeah, he's a
Legion of the Autist.
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
No, but like he's across the store and he stormed over to me. He's like, "What'd you call them?" I'm like, "Tzazinch," and he goes, "It's Zinch." I'm like, "Okay, but there's a T there, so it's Tzazinch," and he just got mad and left.
You didn't call him Szechuan?
Szechuan.
But under Tzeentch's touch, the minds are twisted of the entrapped, driving them to madness. No matter which of the Chaos Gods rule at any given time, the pain of Crucible is unending, a torment that can never be erased or alleviated. This is a world where suffering is not merely an aspect of existence, it is existence itself.
Yeah, cool planet where the gods are just all vying for control, and shows the different power plays at work there, and how, you know, when one rises, another one falls to take his place, another god. Yeah, very cool. Well, that was the end of our notes. Let's go to some call-ins. We got time for one or two. And yeah, first up, we'll get Skeleton to the stage. And hey,
Howdy.
welcome.
How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Just
Yeah.
recovering now. Like, I got to get my mind back into reality after an episode like this. How does
need a
reality work?
shower.
Yeah, it's just quite an expanse to kind of wrap your mind around, especially just kind of how touch and go a lot of it seems to be. There's not any hard rules that you can really fall back on when it comes to the warp or anything like that. So I thought it was a really cool podcast to learn what I did from this.
Yeah, like there like you said, there's no hard and fast rules. There's a couple suggestions. Like, we know emotion affects the warp, but we don't know really how much. Are there stronger emotions? Are there not? Like, who knows? Whatever. What emotions actually carry through? Like, positive emotions just must not be in the warp. They must not have that effect. Otherwise, we would have a god of creativity or a god of happiness or whatever.
Yeah. So, and then bouncing off that, it's just what level of sentience or ability to touch the warp starts to have like impact, because we know some species don't really interact with it like the Tau, but we also know some really get into it like the Eldar. So why that's the case is not something I've kind of heard much about so far. And it's where I find it really interesting in terms of speculation, is wondering, you know, what those rules might be.
Yeah. Like, why are the Eldar more in touch with the psychic side? It's just the way one part of their brain is wired, you know, that allows that, or is it something so much deeper than that, so much more metaphysical?
A little bit
Exactly.
deeper. They were engineered that way somewhat by the old ones.
I don't know about that. Like, I always envisioned the old ones. They were seeding planets, man, and then they were coming back millions of years later and being like, "What did we make on this planet? We didn't actually really do much. We just tossed some genetic gunk down, and it seeded itself." Like the orcs and the Eldar, they were made that way. So it wasn't necessarily that the old ones made them that way intentionally, but they definitely took advantage of them because they came out that way.
Wouldn't the Eldar sort of all the major races in 40K be physiologically closest to humans? And maybe that explains sort of why humans are probably the next closest connection to the warp next to the Eldar and affect the warp the most. I don't know. Just
Makes sense for me.
I still think the humans affect the warp more. I just think okay, so maybe there's the two ways to look at it. Like, the Eldar, yes, they're powerful psychers and they can do all types of powerful things, but it's like their ability to draw from the warp, as opposed to humans have an ability to be drawn from. Because, you know, in older editions, and we could argue over if they're canon or not, like, humans created Khorne, they created Nurgle, they created Chinch, before they were even a galactic empire. So it's like, yeah, the Eldar, they can withdraw and they can take from the warp and take that energy, and they can even solidify that energy into a Wraithbone. But when it comes to the flip side of that equation, humans have that bigger, more available to be pulled from them.
Yeah.
I'd say it comes down a little bit to population size, because the Eldar, on a very universal level, are closer to the warp in terms of potential than humanity, but they're compared to how many there were and how many compared to how many humans there are, the numbers, there's that difference, and therefore it has that restraint. It was all burnt up with Slanesh after all.
Yeah, but like humans, man, even when before they had left Earth, they had created Khorne in the Dark Ages, Nurgle in the Dark Ages. They had created gods from a planet and not an empire. So, like I said, I think it's like you can look at that equation two ways. Like the humans, they're getting drawn from, and you can draw from humans very easily. Where Eldar, they can draw from the warp easily.
Yeah, and I think to some degree they're, and I haven't read too much of the Elder lore so far, but I think humans might just have like an emotional peak to them that might rival the Eldar in many ways. They just might feel things. Because when I think about the Dark Ages, I think of a level of pain and strife and excess that would be equal to what started the birth of Slanesh. You go into any one of those medieval torture museums and you see, Slanesh born right there. So I can totally see that maybe humans being humans just hit all of those notes one right after another so fast in their history because they're just wired a little bit differently.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, what other warp shenanigans are there in this episode to discuss? Did you have a favorite planet there, Skeleton, or a favorite warp rift that you kind of liked?
And I'm gonna be the odd man out here. I do kind of like the internal processes of Logar, so I
Kick
really
him.
kind of like
Kick
it.
him.
Yeah,
Kick him from the call.
now.
Thanks for calling Skeleton Bot. No.
fair enough. But I do like the idea of his devotion taken to the nth degree, having a planet that it very much reeks of like Aztec sacrifices and monuments. This constant feed into the churn of sacrifice, and that
Yeah.
constant build up that leaves me with a very striking image that I do kind of enjoy coming out of Logar in his past. So that's probably my favorite one out of the Demon Worlds.
Yeah, like you said, that's such a cool image of, they have all these spires and they're like religious sites. And what are they doing? What's the way they choose to worship? Yeah, well, they murder babies. Infinite amount of babies are being murdered there. And then their blood just running down the spires. Like,
regenerating new babies that just get sacrificed again and again.
I was going to say, where are they getting all these
Yikes.
babies?
Yeah, that's something I kind of wonder about the Demon Worlds is, at some level, where's the core level of functioning in terms of farming, families and stuff like that to keep on churning through all this, grotesquerie.
Well, maybe
like the one. Go for it.
Maybe the innocents is the people who they taught the mysteries of the warp to, who wouldn't otherwise known. And innocence is lost if you get 1,000 Sun Psyker teaching mortals the complexities of the warp, which they were doing.
Sure. There's a story of the orc. Forget his name. He's a war boss, and he flies into the Eye of Terror and starts battling. And he lands on a demon world of Khorne, and he starts fighting demons. And then he dies. And then he wakes up the next day, and he's on that planet. And him and all his boys are alive, and they go and fight demons. And at the end of the day, everyone's dead, and the whole planet resets. So you're talking about like that infrastructure. How does this place remain functioning? Well, like time can go backwards, like it can reset, so they don't need to actually worry about maintaining a food population for the planet for hundreds of years, because at the end of 2 years, when everyone dies of starvation, all their souls are still like in the Immaterium, and they just kind of reform it, bring time back, and yeah, just make it happen again and again if they want to.
Groundhog Day in hell.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then I can imagine too, like Chaos Space Marines, like abducting people from the Immaterium world, dropping them on demon worlds, and then it's like if somebody can survive on this planet for 5 years, that's going to be a prime Astartes recruitment. They can fill up that population that way too if they wanted to, but ultimately, I think it's just a place that while things happen, nothing really happens, nothing really matters there.
Exactly. Okay, I get you.
Yeah. The chat is saying Tuscan Demon Slayer. Yeah, that Tusca Demon Slayer. That's the orc I was talking about, where it's that prime example of just resetting day after day.
Which would be his version of heaven, I suppose. Fighting every day for eternity.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Any other thoughts there, Skeleton, or we're
really liking the podcast. Just keep up the great work, you guys.
yeah, we've been having a blast going through them.
Yeah, slight plug, but Discord, if anyone's around on Sunday nights, we do a movie night on Discord. So if anyone wants to join, they're welcome to. We usually try to start at like around 7:30 CST.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And yeah, you just watch a bunch of cool 40K themed movies, eh?
Yeah, it really depends on kind of where the community's feeling. So we've been kind of plugging through what I call Kriegsmas, which is a bunch of World War I movies that kind of bring in the German Krieg, all of that stuff. But we're going to start slowly moving out of that and kind of back into the more expansive 40K inspired stuff.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah, definitely join the Discord Sunday night, movies night. A lot of things happening. Cool. Thanks, Skeleton.
So much.
All right. Last call in we'll do is Fuzz. Welcome to the show again. Mi amigo, what's good?
Hey, there we go. How's it going?
Good.
Spicy.
Hey.
Yeah, doing all right here. Thanks for having me on. This was a wild episode in a lot of different ways. Just from all of the different warp aspects to all the different things that were going on, like talking about in the chat, from like tulpas and chaos magic and all the different sci-fi series, but just from warp rifts to demon worlds to incursions to how does the warp work to how does time work. It was just like you say, like it was a lot.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a theoretical physicist now. Put that on my resume.
Excellent.
I gotta say, Fuzz, I was reading everything you were putting down, and it was neat.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I try to be entertaining when I can.
So, what do you think about your favorite planet, favorite warp rift? Any places in the warp you would like to go?
Probably wouldn't want to go into the warp myself. Being a stock standard human, but I think the Great Rift is just super interesting. Like the Cicatrix Maledictum, just how it, as in traditional, 40K standard, cut the galaxy fully in half. Yeah, everything has to be in that 50 percentile. But yeah, you have you do have these two different states of the Imperium. You have the one that has the Light of the Astronomicon that is functioning mostly as normal, but then you have the Dark Imperium. You have the Imperium Nihilus, which is now just all of these people trying to get by, and probably in both halves of it, just like the closer you are to this rift, just the worse things are, the more demon incursions you're having, maybe even the more psychers you're having born on your planets because of all the warp energies leaking out, almost like just like toxic sludge, like leaking into your water, can cause different deformities. All of this warp energy, this chaos energy leaking into your planet is now, now everyone has 3 arms just because they do.
Just because they do. Yeah. Yeah, like you said, it's so cool how they've done that, and makes it so different now. And even just having supply lanes going from north to south through the rift and discovering new stable routes through. My mind kind of also went to I wonder if like it's too late for this to happen, but I wonder if it'd be a good way to kind of, on the southern side, we kind of have the new, more modern version of 40k. We got Primaris runes, we got kind of some of this more advancing. There's Primarchs coming back, and then on the northern side, away from the Astronomicon, we kind of have the more old school 40k, where it's like, yeah, there's Firstborn there, and they're doing that, and there's no Primarchs on that side of the galaxy doing anything, and it's kind of like this reversion back to older times.
I definitely think that's an interesting idea, especially if you're going into like your own homebrew lore stuff, or even if you're going to be doing like a tabletop RPG setting. Like say, Mark, you're gonna run an RPG, but you didn't want to have Primaris in there. I think that is a really realistic, seems like the wrong word, but we'll just go with that for right now. It definitely a good way to do it, I would say.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this episode?
Probably just everything. Like, just the warp is just so absolutely effed. Like, it almost like the warp embodies that more modern Games Workshop motto of everything is real but nothing is canon. And I feel like that just really kind of sums up how the warp works. Like, if you want something to happen, in your homebrew or whatever, because it can mess with time, because it can mess with, just the fabric of reality, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
And I've said this before, like, I do think that like there are, but like positive emotions and stuff do affect the warp, but maybe at like a lesser scale. I think like sort of like the chaos gods and like what we think of as like demons and the warp is like a subsection of the Immaterium. But I know like this episode's gone on a long time, so I'm not going to get into this rant. I'll talk to you on Discord about it if you're interested, but like that it's like its whole, like the Immaterium is its own ecosystem and the chaos gods are like a subsection of it.
Yeah. Like maybe the good emotions are so bright in the warp that they instantly just get swarmed by all the demonic entities to like eat it and devour it. So it just never has like a chance to form anything useful, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, cool thoughts for sure. Anything else? Anyone else want to say anything?
I'll close off on saying, join the Discord, join the Imperial Tithe. Your entertainment to dollar value ratio you're going to have a hard time finding a better one.
Yeah, that is true. That is canon. Maybe final question for you there, Fuzz. It was you who mentioned the Tau god in the chat, hey?
Yeah, I've brought up Tauva a few times recently, just with people asking on stuff in the Discord. She is, basically she is kind of an example of a quote unquote good warp entity, warp god, since she was created kind of as the concept of the greater good made manifest by all of the psychically sensitive allied races to the Tau.
Did we lose you there, Mark?
I think he looks frozen on my screen as well.
Yeah. Everything froze there for a second for me.
Looks like Mark has been lost to the zone.
Uh-oh, Mark got swallowed by a warp rift.
That's okay. We'll just keep going. Yeah. Thanks for calling in, Fuzz. That sounds
no
good.
problem.
We'll keep going. We'll do some of the end notes here. So make sure to tune into Lorehammer Listener Lore, where mostly Mark just reads your listener lore, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then also make sure to check out the Star Wars podcast, the best Star Wars podcast on the HoloNet. That's mine and Christian's. We do that one. It's a Star Wars podcast, so make sure you check it out. And then you got one more there, Logan.
Yeah, that's my YouTube channel, at Hydra Thoughts. If you want to come hang out with me and learn about cryptids, conspiracies, history, and religious mysteries, come on down. We're having a great time.
Yeah.
Cool. And we'll read out the Patreon people who joined recently. Thank you all so much for joining Patreon. It really means a whole lot to us. We're growing steadily. And more dollars every day. Like I said earlier this episode, there's a new Discord tag called Provisional Tither. So if you do just a one-time donation, it can be as cheap as 1 cent. You'll get that tag. But I recommend making it so it's more than like transfer fees. You know, you don't want to be paying more in transfer fees. So this month, Patreon members are Finbar, John, Alpha Omega, The Cowboy, Moogs, Alexander, and Hayden. So thank you all so much. And yeah, that's the show. Thanks all for listening, and we'll see you next week. Adios.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.
Yeah.